Because you're never going to continue. I mean, we've got declining enrollment, for example. So
Because you're going to
you're never going to have that percentage. So you won't. Now, if we miss our estimate, or different schools, so that's kind of the thing.
So why do you predict that much? Because that's what it is at that moment.
Well, because you really can't, as soon as you start adjusting.
Hi, Harrison.
I've been out of my office all day.
I know you've been busy.
Okay. We're going to call the meeting to order. Member Wasson, would you call the roll?
Member Cameron? Here. Member Glass?
Present.
Member Grover?
Here.
Member Johnston? Member Casper?
Here.
Member Saliga Punko? Here. Myself, I'm here. Superintendent Dixon?
Here.
Deputy Clerk Bill Hansen?
Here.
Secretary Malian Theobald? Student Representatives Maya Gallagher? Peter Witzig? John Peterson.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Member Wasson. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item of business is approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve the agenda as published.
So moved.
Moved by Member Saliga Punko. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Cameron. Member Johnston.
Yes, I would move to have an addition on the agenda. Now would be a hearing on the vote on pursuing the EAW lawsuit. I brought this to the attention of both the clerk and the chairperson back in May 31st. And now this is the second time this has been denied on this agenda. And so I have a motion to put that on the agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to add the matters relating to the lawsuit. Member Johnston?
Yes, I think it's real important that make it real clear here that we had a special meeting there where we consulted with the attorney. What I am talking about is not about that. I made it very clear to this board that what I want to do is have a discussion on why we are pursuing this lawsuit, not details on what the attorney is saying. I want to have a vote. This board has not voted to pursue this lawsuit, and I think we're violating law and our own bylaws on this. It's critical, so I'm asking this board to vote to add this agenda item on.
Member Johnston, I think it's quite clear from board action a week ago when we went into closed session that the desire of the board, majority of the board, is to discuss this behind closed doors under the attorney-client privilege option that we have, and I think it's would not be appropriate to discuss the things that you're relating to in public, since the board, again, the majority of the board has clearly expressed a desire not to do so. Go ahead.
Yeah, so the chairperson seems to misunderstand. I am asking that this board vote on whether or not we should be pursuing a lawsuit. That is what I'm asking for here, is have a discussion and a vote on whether we should be pursuing this. This board has never approved pursuing these lawsuits, and I think we should be.
Member Johnston, once again, you're lapsing. You're moving into areas that were discussed behind closed doors. Keep in mind that the board did not initiate this lawsuit. We are not pursuing this lawsuit. We are defendants in this lawsuit. Public discussion has been deemed by this board to be inappropriate, and I think we're going to have to limit that discussion in the future. I would really appreciate it, and I think the board would, the rest of the board would also. I think we need to go ahead and vote on your amendment to the published agenda. All right, all those in favor of adding the motion to add discussion of the pending lawsuit to our agenda, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. No. And that fails 3 to 4. All right. Member Johnston?
I have another motion to add the agenda item. This motion would be to have a hearing for school closures per Minnesota statutes at 123B 51 subdivision 5.
Second.
Could you specify which school closures you're referring to?
All of them.
That's
Morgan Park, Lincoln Park, Rock Ridge, Central, STC. Did I miss any? Nettleton.
I think there's all kinds of legal issues, but let's see if that wins unanimous board
I
support.
do have a discussion on this item,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman.
Go ahead.
Again, I'd like to read the Minnesota statute. It says the board may close the schoolhouse only after a public hearing on the question of the necessity and practicality of the proposed closing. Published notice of the hearing shall be given for 2 weeks in the official newspaper of the district. The time and place of the meeting, the description and location of the schoolhouse, statement of the reasons for the closing must be specified in the notice. Parties requesting to give testimony for and against the proposal shall be heard by the board before it makes a final decision to close or not to close the school. This is mandatory. These are shells.
Member Saliga-Punko?
Chair Grover, I recall reading that this is a premature motion because we're not closing any schools for a while. We've got another year before we're going to be doing that. So, and I remember reading that response. So we really don't need this yet.
Member Johnston?
I think anybody listening here will know that that's really not true. We have to have a hearing. The law says we have to have a hearing. If we're going to wait for 1 week before the wrecking balls go, I don't think that the public here would think that that's quite following the intent of the law. The intent of the law is to have a hearing on whether or not the schools are going to be closed, not to have a hearing 1 week before the wrecking ball hits it. That's just absolutely silly, and it's another insult to the people. I'm asking this board to add this agenda items, and so we can put on a hearing on this and fulfill the letter of the law.
I'm going to ask administration, Member Johnston, to respond to say, I guess, what would be generally speaking, what would be the sort of time frame involved on a school closure. Dr. Dixon, could you comment briefly on that as far as, like 1 week or 6 months or 2 years before the actual closure?
Board members, you'll remember on this discussion, we did have this discussion more than once. We actually asked legal counsel to prepare a brief on your behalf outlining, this came up even a year ago when we went to 2 middle schools, and the legal advice at that point was, number one is, as long as the building's in use, it doesn't meet the statute for a school closing. Certainly, I think the test of reasonableness, we're not planning to do this a week before the building closes. We've talked about putting a schedule together that would allow the normal processes working backwards. And I think, in fact, at a public board meeting, there was a discussion about this. Same question came up with the idea that we would start looking, depending on the year of school closed, we'd start looking at it, say, in the spring of that year to give ample time. By the way, board, you've been through these before. Some of you have been on the board a number of years and have gone through school closing procedures. You know that generally it takes a few months. It's not something that happens in a week.
Member Johnston? Thank you, Superintendent.
Do I understand then that until we have those hearings that the construction will cease?
No, you're not hearing that. We've also got construction will continue on the long-range plan that was voted on as approved by this board, and each project is approved by this board.
So what's the point of having a hearing then if all the irreparable damage is already done? What the hearing is there to disclose for the public? What's the point of having that hearing then if it's not to have this before the schools are implemented and start to be closed? You mentioned we've had a brief. I haven't received no brief at all from the attorney. I would like to have a brief from our attorney clarifying this, and I think it's absolutely imperative that we follow the law on this, and I can't believe that we can wait till 2 weeks before the wrecking balls go, and that's okay from a legal point of view.
I'll remind the board that brief was prior to the new board members coming on the board.
Okay, thank you.
We can certainly pull up that brief and get you another copy of that.
Yeah, that is something that we should do. All right, all those in, Member Glass, are you going to pull the lights on for me, or are you waiting to vote?
I'm waiting to vote, but then
All right.
I did
Okay.
have a motion of my own to...
All right, okay, you'll be recognized next. All those in favor of adding the subject of school closures to tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. That fails 3-4. With members Glass, Johnston, and Casper voting no, or excuse me, voting yes. Member Glass.
Yes, I want to make a note that I had requested 4 agenda items for this meeting that were not approved by the agenda setting process, and I want to put the appropriate notice that I would like at least 3 of these 4 topics to be discussed at future meetings, if not the next one, particularly the life safety security issues that are presently underway at the different school buildings, including this building. I think it's imperative that we have a discussion focused on the life safety security needs of these buildings, because in my view, they're not being dealt with equitably. So I'd like to make a notice that this topic gets on the agenda for discussion and action. So I would like to make a motion to that effect, if necessary.
What is your motion?
That we add the life safety security needs of ISD school buildings as a topic of discussion and action.
For tonight, on tonight's agenda.
At tonight's agenda or the next meeting's agenda.
Well,
Tonight's
we're
agenda.
dealing with tonight's agenda right now. So you're talking about for tonight's agenda. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Seconded by Member Johnston. Additional discussion? Member Wasson?
I would have problems with the motion only that administration wouldn't have time to prepare or have anything to give us, and I just think the motion is not favorable at this time.
All right, Member Johnston?
If I understand it right, Member Glass submitted this already, and shouldn't the administration have had plenty of time to respond at this point?
Superintendent?
Board members, as you know, we did respond. I actually sent a response to you on this item to give you information on this item. Whether you still want to discuss it or not is another situation. I don't have that information I sent to you, but I would remind the board that this life safety standards were approved by the board. All of the schools the 2 high schools, 2 middle schools, and 9 elementary are all following those life safety standards that were approved by the board. We can pull those standards out if you want to see them again.
Member Johnston?
I'm glad that a response was made, and that's been appreciated, but the point is that there was a request made to have this an agenda item, and I think that should be acknowledged and lived up to by this board, and those discussions that we had would certainly be good, but we want to have a discussion on that and have a public discussion, and I believe that's why Member Glass put it on here.
Member Glass?
Yes, we are taking some action tonight to include some of these issues in the 10-year extended plan, and this building is one of them that seems to be exempted from the life safety security health considerations, because the original Johnson Control study had 81 needs identified that totaled $14 million. 39 of those needs were identified for action in the long-range facility plan for a cost of $6 million. And with the revised plan 3 weeks ago, that number dropped to 19 for $2 million. And in the latest version for today's action, we're down to almost none at $1 million. And so we've gone from a contractor identified need of $14 million down to less than $1 million. And that is to me an unacceptable change in ignoring the priorities that our consultants are telling us are urgently needed. And when you can't walk around this building yourself without fear of your life because of the tiles falling off the roof, you know that there's a problem with the life safety aspect. And so that needs to be dealt with in a more higher priorities scope, and we need to add this back to our list for consideration.
All right, all those in favor of the motion to add the life safety issues, I should say, I guess health and safety issues to tonight's agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. That fails 3-4. Members Glass, Casper, and Johnston voting yes. All right. Seeing no more lights on, all those in favor of the agenda as approved, as published, say yes. Yes. All those opposed, say no.
No.
All right, that passes 6-1. Member Glass voting no. Brings us to reading and approving minutes. We have four sets of minutes. First, the special school board meeting of June 15th. Could I have a motion for approval?
So
Moved by
moved.
member Saliga Punko, seconded by member Cameron. Thank you. Any additions or corrections to those minutes? Member Saliga Punko? Okay, seeing no lights on, all those in favor of approving the special school board meeting minutes from June 15th, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Those are approved unanimously. Second is the regular school board meeting minutes from June 15th.
So moved.
Approval
Second.
moved by member Cameron, seconded by member Saliga Punko. Please note that we got a correction, I think it was on page 10 and 11 of in three separate places where vote was initially recorded incorrectly, and that has been corrected. Any other additions or corrections to those minutes, member Johnston?
Yes, I believe there was a misprint on top of page 4. There was a motion to amend the civility code to add "be honest and tell the truth." I recall that amendment passed. Wasn't not voted down.
No, it did not pass.
Is that I guess reading back on these, I had a hard time believing this board didn't pass it, so I guess I must have just been having a bad dream or something.
An extended one.
Member Johnston, would you want to turn your light out, please? Seeing no other lights on for discussion on the June 15th regular board meeting minutes, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Those are approved unanimously. That brings us to the special school board meeting of June 24th.
So moved. Second.
Approval moved by member Saliga Punko, seconded by member Cameron. Any additions or corrections to these minutes? Seeing no lights on, all those in favor of the minutes as published say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Approved unanimously. And lastly, the special school board meeting of July 12th. Could I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Second, moved by member Saliga Punko, seconded by member Cameron. Any additions or corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving these minutes say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Approved unanimously. Next item on the agenda is public comment or audience, as it says on the agenda. Please keep in mind that we typically limit our comments to 3 minutes. I think we're going to make one exception tonight with the board's agreement. We'll come to that. Please follow the civility code, which if the board has reaffirmed. If you're not familiar with it, it's posted on the wall right back near the coffee pot. The first speaker is Liz Larson.
Good evening. I didn't know I had to study the civility code before I started, so I'll cross my fingers that I remain civil. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Liz Larson. I have been the theater director at Central High School for the last 13 years. And for the last 4 years, I've worked on the summer musical, which is what I'm here to talk about tonight, along with a little bit of bragging about our programs. Both Central actually all 3 schools have had a full season of shows thanks to my efforts, the efforts of Mr. Rod Dahlquist and of Matt Percy at Denfeld High School, and we're very excited about that, and we're very excited about the number of students we have involved. For example, in the fall, we generally do a musical which involves usually right around 100 students, if you count everybody that's in it. The one act by the Minnesota State High School rules only allows 20, and in the past 13 years, we've only not advanced to section finals one time, and we've only not placed first or second in the section one time. So the students are super involved and they're super hardworking, and even when they're brand new, they get dragged into the fray very quickly. This is my friend Mackenzie Morse. In this play, she gets to play a girl. Last time she was kind of a grubby boy in Wiley and the Hairy Man. And she's playing Annie, and we're very excited to present Annie, which opens next Thursday and runs Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I'm really hoping to see some of you there, certainly any of you with families. It's certainly a family, fun, friendly show, and yes, we do have a live dog who caused us some problems today, but fortunately, Mackenzie is a dog person, so everything will be all right. So we hope that everybody will come and enjoy the show. Rehearsals are going very well. We're in the final push, which is the scariest part for us, but I can assure you that you'll be entertained and you will enjoy at least one thing. If not, come to me and I'll give you your money back. How's that? I do beg for your support to tell your friends if you can't make it yourself, and that includes everybody here because I feel really awkward. Hi. Hi. Yeah, it doesn't seem right. I'm sorry. Yeah. Anyway, and I know this is a stressful time for our community and our schools and the people in it, and I know it's a stressful time for the board, and everything can be very difficult, but just like FDR said, he was going to have everybody be optimistic if it was the last thing he did. So to that end, Annie, go ahead.
Oh, the sun will come out tomorrow, and your bottoms all that tomorrow. There'll be sun, just thinking about tomorrow. There's a way and sorrow. Till there's none. When I'm stuck with the day that's gray and lonely, I just stick up my chin and grin and say, oh, the sun'll come out tomorrow, so you gotta hang on till tomorrow. Come what may, tomorrow, tomorrow, I love you tomorrow, you're always a day away.
There's lots more where that came from. Thank you for listening to us, and we hope to see you at the show.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, Mackenzie. We all have in our green packets, our green folders, I should say, we all have some material about Annie and when it is, so spread the word. All right, next speaker is Rich Paulson, followed by Brenda Anderson.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to talk about the handout I just gave to the board members there. It's based on the Department of Administration's opinion. I'm here tonight to request that the school board publicly share the total terms of the tentative teachers contract agreement for 2011 to 2013 before the school board publicly votes to ratify this agreement. As many can recall, the previous two-year teacher's contract for 09 through 11 was approved June 16th of 09 at a regular board meeting without the members' knowledge of the total cost of the contract. And I'm still waiting to see if there's a cost summary sheet somewhere for that contract that we would show the total cost, but I'm still waiting. I always wonder what the public would have done if they had known this contract allowed an over 32% increase in the cost of the district's health insurance retroactive to January 1, 2009. Single coverage increased by $166.41 a month, or annually $1,997. Family coverage was increased $195.55 monthly, or an annually $2,350. Estimated district costs was $6.9 million for the 30 months. And annually right now, I guess it's at $11.2 million for health insurance alone. Do any board members here know the cost of the new public employees insurance program effective January 1, 10, and the impact on the teachers' salaries? Are you familiar with that? Doesn't seem like. I think it's a very important thing, but you don't see or hear anything about it. It's a key issue. So I think before the board considers approving any new teacher's contract, you need to consider those factors along with what the federal legislation regarding health insurance coverage and costs will take effect here next year, what that will be, handling the unknown, PEIP, if those initials are correct, for the new insurance carrier starting in 2011, starting 1/1/11. I think you should have
it's time to start wrapping it up, Rich.
I think you need to know the audit for June 30th, 10, and the potential costs to restructure your health insurance. I've talked about this before. Thank you. So please table that until the public and everybody knows the cost of any new agreement.
Thank you, Rich. Brenda Anderson, followed by Lauren Martell.
Tonight you're voting on borrowing an additional $5.3 million for the RED plan, the same plan that you said over a year ago that you were done borrowing for. The same plan that you continue to call the $296 million plan. You say that this action will not cost the taxpayers additional money, yet you also say that some of the repairs and remodeling work will be less than you had planned, and that at least 2 buildings will not get the promised work. So we're getting fewer improvements for more money. And I can't help but wonder, were the repair and remodels that are being scrapped unnecessary in the first place? Because I've heard that this board say all of the RED plan was necessary for health and safety of our students. Remember you, Mr. Dixon, this $296 million plan is a Chevy, you said, but to many in the community, it feels more like a Hummer. More likely, you will be coming back to the taxpayers again and again as this plan continues to go over budget and your investments underperform. Despite repeatedly assuring the public that you are under budget, you just keep coming back for more and more. And now, despite having $300 million to work with, still the largest school plan in Minnesota history, you still just can't make it work. Now you will scrap the plans for a new transportation building, and you have already taken $4 million from the planned improvements of the historic Old Central. Sounds like poor budgeting, and a way of fixing the overruns are by robbing Peter to pay Paul. Your inability to find a plan that fits within the budget, funded by taxpayer dollars, is costing the students and this community well-attended and well-loved neighborhood schools, loss of many of our teachers, and the biggest thing of all, trust from this community. You can still tighten your belt and reel in spending by utilizing and remodeling current neighborhood schools instead of building a new middle school. Lastly, I'm not sure when the last financial audit of this school district happened, but it might be time for the public to request that this is done now, because there's no way I know of that you can continually add to a plan and it not increase the cost. And there is no way that you can continue to borrow additional money without having to make payments at some point. Pushing the payments off to the future when it is off the radar of the public for future boards to deal with is not the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Lauren Martell, followed by Sharon Witherspoon.
Three or 4 months back, a young student from Central came up to this podium and tried to remind the majority of promises that had been made. They nodded and, of course, thanked him very much, then promptly forgot about him. So my question is this. You're always talking about the children. What's the lesson for the kids here? You don't have to keep your promises. Your word means nothing. Doesn't matter how you play the game as long as you come up on the winning side. You can tell anybody anything you want to tell them. Then after you've gotten what you want from them, say elected office, you can just turn your back on them and ignore their concerns. Someone can come up to this podium and read your own emails back to you. Emails professing beliefs diametrical to your actions as a public official, and you can just sit up there acting all officious.
Mr. Martell, you're crossing the line. Would you please limit your comments to issues and policies, not individuals and personalities, etc.? Please follow the civility policy.
I'd like to hear Mr. Martell. I think civility goes both ways. I'd like to hear Mr. Martell.
Clock is running.
It wasn't surprising to me at all at the last meeting that the majority could not add the word truth to their civility code. How could they? When their own leader made several promises 3 years ago when he was running for re-election.
Mr. Martell, you're crossing into individual attacks here. I'm going to ask you to leave the podium.
I got 3 minutes.
Mr. Martell, I'm going to ask you to leave the podium, please.
Sir, I'm prepared to deal with whatever you're throwing at me tonight.
I'd like to have Martell have his 3 minutes. And I would suggest, Lauren, to go ahead and finish your talk, or I'll wait till we come back.
Okay, I'll do that. At the last meeting, one of the members went on and on about board members attending graduation ceremonies. Well, I noted, and many others did as well, that someone did not attend the graduation ceremony at Central this year, the biggest school in his district. And I know he has an excuse. He'd pipe up with as soon as I walked away from the podium if he'd been able to stand and sit in his room and take it. But I think that he knows, that the kids know who is most to blame for what may happen to their beloved school, and that he was afraid. That was my version of the truth, and many people in this town will agree with it.
Thank you, Mr. Martell. I believe the board was not properly recessed. There was no motion taken. It was violating rules of order. So shall we continue with the meeting? Oh, that's right. We don't have a quorum anymore. Excuse me.
Next speaker is Sharon Witherspoon, followed by Claudia Washington.
Good evening. Good evening, Board. Good afternoon. I rise to the occasion to say that I remain firmly committed to expressing my concerns regarding the dismal achievement gap of children of color, specifically African American children within the district. The Native Americans and African Americans have similar academic inequities within the district. The Assistant Superintendent issued a memorandum to the board addressing the district's response to the Indian Education Concurrence/Non-Concurrence Report. At the very first board meeting of the 2009-2010 academic year in November, the president of the NAACP and I, as chair of the district's Education Equity Council, also requested that the district likewise examine the achievement gap for the African American students. And I also am respectfully requesting a similar response from the district. Secondly, I want to address the lack of hiring staff, teachers, and administrators of color within the district. The following positions were recently posted: Assistant Director of Special Education, Dean of Students of Color at Central, and the Principal of Homecroft. The failure to aggressively recruit, hire, train, promote, and retain people of color is clearly an indication that there is a need to undo and dismantle racism within this district. Respectfully, Sharon Witherspoon. I have something to give to.
Thank you, Sharon.
Again, I'm speaking on behalf of the NAACP. The NAACP remains firmly committed to the comprehensive quality in preschool through postgraduate studies. We recognize that combating segregation while struggling for desegregation and quality education will have a number of diversity impacts on the aspect of learning beyond the simple creation of a diverse student body. And students of color have been shown to benefit from a rich, relevant, challenging curriculum delivered and assessed with a variety of methods, and such diversity in teaching and learning methods would include lesson and tests tailored to fit various learning styles and allowing special education students to be integrated into to the greatest extent possible with their non-learning disabled peers. The NAACP will work for diversity in a range of school processes, including but not limited to the recruitment, hiring, and retention of teachers and creative curriculum, teaching and assessment methods. And the NAACP will measure diversity in the curriculum by the inclusion of African American history and the history of the nation's broad struggle for civil rights in the curriculum as required rather than voluntary. The NAACP advocate for a diverse teaching core generated by diversifying the pipeline for prospective teachers along racial, cultural, linguistic, and social economic lines, with a particular emphasis on strategies that allow communities to grow their own educators. The NAACP will work for diversity and access to the challenging curriculum rather than ability groupings that deny some students access to higher opportunities to learn. We urge the school board to support us in these initiatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Claudia. That completes the audience public comment portion of the agenda. Dr. Dixon, do you want to take the next two items, which should be the communications, et cetera, and your own report?
Sure, members of the board. First, written communications. A note the 7 that are listed in your document tonight that are read into the record. 6 of them deal with the long-range facility plan, and I think one of them deals with the music program at Lowell. So you see those listed in your report as indicated. Relative to my report tonight, I want to keep it brief. Usually we try to keep the July agenda a little briefer, but we're pretty busy. But first, I know later on the agenda you're looking at approving a contract for Bill Gronseth, and I wanted to say a few things about that. Bill is here. Actually, he's been working since July 1, actually, before that point in time. But I'm pleased to recommend Bill for the position, interim position as assistant superintendent. Bill has been a long-standing leader and teacher in our district. He worked at the elementary level teaching at both Stowe, Nettleton, and Laura MacArthur. He's also been in leadership positions in the district, notably an assistant principal at East High School, and then has served the last couple of years as principal at Homecroft Elementary. So Bill has a breadth of experiences that span elementary through high school. He's also been active as you know, on the Labor Management Committee for a number of years now. He's been active in a number of our educational initiatives underway in the district, and I think for Bill to come in here, he can hit the ground running. He knows the district. He knows the issues. He's been a part of the leadership team the whole time I've been here, and so I'm pleased to have Bill step into that role. As I said today, Bill's really already added a lot of value in the few weeks he's been here, so I would encourage your approval of his contract. I do want to, with Sharon and Claudia here tonight, I do want to also acknowledge all the work they, along with a lot of you as board members and other individuals this summer did, working really on our achievement gap and some of the major shifts we've made for this fall. There's not a single strategy that's going to close the achievement gap, but it's a multiple of strategies, and I think we know that the strategies we're looking at for fall really do, in our vernacular, are best practices across the country. The RTI model, the response to intervention, the literacy specialists and working with teachers on an ongoing basis, assessing students on an ongoing basis so we know where every student is, the integration specialists and the roles they're going to play in our schools, the whole work we've done on cultural competency with our staff through experiences like IDI and ASDEC circles and other opportunities, including myself and a number of the leadership team. I think that all bodes well for our future. We've got a long way to go. It's not a one-year proposition to do this. It's a national conversation. I would tell you, in fact, I was on a conference call today with Washington talking about picking our brain about some of the initiatives we're doing next year, from Senator Franken's office to a number of other people in Washington about some of these new interventions. So again, I want to thank everyone who's working on those things and look forward to the fall when we can start putting some of these things in action. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. Brings us to the report of standing committees. The Education Committee is first. Member Saliga Punko.
Okay, this is the Education Committee for July. We had some presentations. The first one was the Safe Routes to School presentation, where we learned this whole bike routes and trikes, and it was kind of fun to see what they did. We had lots of pictures, and it was really, really exciting. And we had a presentation on state assessment results. We also had a presentation about the Haste Family Scholarship. And then information items, we had grant applications, Minnesota Power Foundation grant application, and it's recommended that we receive this item as informational. An EPA grant application, and it's recommended that the Duluth School Board receive this item as informational. And then we have some action items requiring approval. Study Island presentation, it's recommended that the Duluth School Board accept and approve this item. To response to the resolution of concurrence, non-concurrence report, and it's recommended the Duluth School Board accept and approve this item. And I'm going to skip the resolution right now, right? And no extended trip requests. D is access to internet student data, non-district employees. It's requested that the following organizations be granted access to our student information system to support district functions from July 1st, 2010 to June 30th, 2011. And it will allow specific people associated with these organizations access to certain educational data maintained by the Duluth Public Schools. Superintendent will approve all individual access on a case-by-case basis, and the recommendation, it's recommended the Duluth School Board accept and approve this item. And E is Policy 5085, Student Discipline Policy. Recommended revisions to Policy 5085, Student Discipline Policy, are attached for the second reading, and it's recommended the Duluth School Board accept and approve revisions to Policy 5085, Student Discipline Policy, for the second reading. And diplomas, the following student has completed all high school requirements and should be awarded a diploma. Thomas Monahan, June 2nd, 2010. And 2010 grads, letter G, it's recommended by administration that the official minutes include a certified list of graduates of June 2010 as submitted by the respective high schools. And it's recommended the Duluth School Board accept and approve the attached list of 2010 graduates. And then I'm going to go back to the resolution. You'll find it on page 92. It's just accepting grant awards to Duluth Public Schools. The first one is the Northland Foundation. Bonnie Walden is the author. The SMART Workshop. The award is $5,000. Funds from this grant award will be used to help cover costs associated with sponsoring a SMART Workshop in Duluth for pre-kindergarten grade 1 educators in Duluth and the surrounding area from August 17th through the 20th. Of this year. The SMART curriculum is a multi-sensory approach to learning designed to develop and enhance physiological and neurological readiness skills students need to succeed in school. So that's one. Second one is from the Minnesota Department of Education. Jody LeBlanc is the contact for that. State Fiscal Stabilization Funding, CFDA 84.394, and it's for $1,975,745.79. And this amount is in addition to the initial allocation of $4,010,932.72, which the Duluth School Board approved on September 17th of 2009. Funds from this grant award will be used to offset the state unallotment for the salary and fringe of elementary FTEs. Number 3 is the St. Louis County Family Services Collaborative. Pam Reese is the contact. Head Start grant of $36,000. Funds from this grant award will be used to hire a mental health consultant. So I move resolution E-7-10-2791 dated July 20th, 2010.
Thank you. Member Saliga-Punko, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Wasson. Any board discussion? Member Casper?
Yes, I'd like 3A1 and 3A2, please.
Oh,
We're just doing the resolution.
We're just on the resolution itself right now, though.
Yeah, just the resolution.
Seeing no discussion on the resolution, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. That is approved unanimously. Now, Member Saliga-Punko, you want to move the rest of the...
So I'll move the education report for July 2010.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Seconded by Member Cameron. Member Casper.
Yes, I'd like to discuss 3A1 and 3A2, please.
Member Cameron?
1B.
Pardon me?
1B. B as a boy.
Right. And Member Saliga-Punko. Oh, okay. Let's see. Number 1B, Member Cameron.
I'd like to thank Tanya for the excellent reports that you presented regarding test scores. And I regret that I was not able to be at the Education Committee meeting, but I spoke with Keith earlier today, and I went through every graph that is in our board packet. And I need to say that I got sick to my stomach looking at the ethnic subgroups and the scores. And we can boast that most of all the tests, we typically do better when we look at the district and the state, and we typically do better. But when we look at those ethnic subgroups, it's disheartening. And I appreciate Claudia and Sharon bringing to the attention of this board and administration the importance, the work that we really need to be focusing on, and that's educating children in this district. And I'm hoping that and praying that with hard work and the addition of the integration specialist, getting involved with the community and the parents, that we're going to improve on these grades. But make no mistake, it's going to take more than the integration specialist. I just want to point that out. It's going to take the community. It's going to take the teachers, and it's going to take collaboration and cooperation with all, because we really need to change these results. But again, you did excellent work on presenting the data, and I really appreciate it because it was very easy to read. And matter of fact, I called Sharon up, and we both talked about it and shared it. So I appreciate the hard work. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Cameron. 3A1, that would be Member Casper.
Yes, I'd also like to acknowledge Tanya Lake as well with her information. It's very helpful to us to see what is going on within each of our grades and our kids, so it's important information. You also did a presentation on Study Island and integrating that, and I support that. But I did express a couple of concerns. One of them in the area of it being an after-school program, computer-generated program, and we haven't thoroughly discussed how we're going to, especially for kids that have limited access to transportation, whether their parents don't have it or their parents are working or whatever it happens to be, for these kids that would normally ride a bus home at the end of the day. And we haven't put into place, at least from my understanding, and maybe we have now, put into place a way to get these children safely home if they choose to participate in a program like this. Also, being it computer-generated and after-school program, kids that don't have access to computers, that don't have access to the internet, outside of that limited time with the program after school. So I want you to know that I support this, and I want the board to know that I support this, but I also want us to have things in place that will create the availability for these kids to be able to excel, and the knowledge for their parents to know that if they get involved in a program like this, the obstacles are not there to limit their ability to participate. So we talked about it last week, and I'm hoping that by the time we initiate this program that we have those obstacles or those barricades knocked down, and we've offered that availability to all kids within our district. So.
All right, Member Casper, number 2 there.
Yes.
You want to say what it is for the viewing audience?
Okay, the response to the resolution of concurrence, non-concurrence report. I would like a little better understanding of this. I know we got a small report on it, and we talked about it very, very briefly last week at our special board meeting, but I was hoping Mr. Gronseth could give me, for those that, and maybe I'm the only one that didn't thoroughly understand the findings and how we're approaching those findings and dealing with those and ensuring that those kinds of things are being met. So.
Well, the response really has been the work that has happened through the whole past year, and working with the community and the Office of Educational Equity, and in all of these pieces that we've been talking about, the data coaches, the integration specialists, the interventions that are being put into place for those kids that need a little bit more than the core curriculum. And through the integration specialists being able to focus our attention on specific students, especially students of color. Through our new math curriculum, our reading curriculum adoption that took place last year that included some of the cultural pieces. For future curriculum committees, making sure that we have people of color involved in that process so that we continue to make adoptions that meet cultural standards. Does that help?
Perhaps I could add to this as well, maybe backing up one step further too. We do have also, there's a number of advisory groups, one of which is a Native American Parent Advisory Board that we do have an Office of Indian Education, and we have a full-time director in that position. Part of that role and responsibility is to meet on an ongoing basis with parents and have them advise the district on what we need to do that they look at to say improve the educational opportunities and systems for their students. And that this concurrence, non-concurrence report is an annual event that has taken place for a number of years. And I think that's the genesis of it. It's how does meeting with the parents, how do they see some of these issues, and then report that to the Department of Education. And then the district's response is, how are we doing on some of those items that appear there? So that backing up, that's the sort of genesis of where this comes from to begin with. Now, we've also done some other things over the past, because there are items in there. You're going to see some items in there similar to what you just heard talked about relative for African American students as well. I mean, to increase the number of Native American teachers in the system and so forth. You'll also see the same concerns about the achievement gap. You'll also, I would back up to say, we also had added another levels and had a private consultant come in and really, from an external set of eyes, look at all this and wrote a report back to the board that we had a committee meeting about, advising the board about some specific activities we should take into place. Terry also needs to work with us to help us implement some of those strategies. He presently serves on the Education Committee, subcommittee of the district, as an example, to help with sort of the improving the curriculum of the district as well, and so it's an ongoing effort. I think actually that report, if you remember, along with some of the concerns expressed by our African American community, sort of formed the genesis for a discussion relating to not only the needs of Native American children, but African American children as well. And there were items in that report by Ms. Novak that sort of applied broader than Native American students and was used as a basis to start the discussion for all of the district. All of the stuff you've heard talked about has been the result of that work this year. Now, it doesn't mean that we don't have a long way to go, and that some of those perceptions and feelings and the data would support we have a long way to go is still in that concurrence report. So that's I don't know if that helps, but that's sort of the historic perspective on this piece. Okay.
So we've heard those concerns. We are working towards dealing with them, some of them more quickly than others, and the parents are feeling like they've been heard. Their concerns are been hopefully met or dealt with, and we're working towards progress within that.
And again, that's not an event, but a journey that we're all on here. Increasing the number of employees of color, as an example, takes time. I also agree with what Claudia tonight said, sort of the grow your own. We've been working, I think in St. Scholastica right now as an example, it's offering scholarships to our graduates of students of color to encourage them to go to school that maybe perhaps then down the road could stay in the community and come back and teach for us. So, some of these initiatives are going to take some time, to build into the system.
Member Glass.
Yes, I am also hopeful that this program can be expanded at a faster rate, because it would appear to me that tweaking the programs is not really going to add in a major way to the fact that less than 50% of these minorities finish high school or graduate. It seems that we need to take a more radical approach, something that would get to the answer quicker. And I can't tell you what that is at the moment, except that I don't see the data laid out in a fashion that we can interpret it. I'd like to see how many kids of color get past the 6th grade, get past the 9th grade, get past the 12th grade in a quantitative fashion. So where are these 50% dropping out? The same thing for American Indians. How many kids get past the different grade levels so that we can see where do we lose the 70%? We have some radical needs here. These aren't just minor tweaking. These kids are going somewhere else, and they're not getting through the system and not getting educated. So I'm not particularly satisfied that this response goes far enough to get at the questions and the answers. I'd like to see the centers, for instance, at each of the schools that have the greatest population and the greatest loss. Something has got to be there to attract these kids to come to school. We're losing them before they come to school and can be exposed to the teachers. They don't get in the door. And so unless we can figure out a way to get them there and then educate them, we're not going to be successful at the level that we have to achieve. 50% graduation rate is simply not happy, not acceptable. So we've got to do more than I can see this plan is getting us to, and I hope we can give it more attention in the future. And I did have some other comments on the code of conduct, so when we get past this issue.
Member Cameron.
I just want to say one thing in regards to what Member Glass just said. If you've got suggestions for some radical actions that we could take, I would most certainly be welcome to hear that, and I'm sure members of the Education Equity Advisory Council would welcome that information as well. Member Casper asked, have their needs been met? And some of those needs that they are asking for is they want their children to see teachers that look like them in the school building. So no, their needs have not been met. They want to see the academic achievement gap close. So no, their needs have not been met. And again, a lot of the data that you're asking for at various meetings that the Education Equity Advisory Council have held, where there were 60, 70, maybe sometimes 80 people from the community, excitement going on right here in this building. That data Tanya has provided to us. And so it's taken that data, having all that information, and figuring out what to do with it. And you're absolutely right. Some of these kids are not making it into the door. Their parents don't feel comfortable with them making it through the door. And so that's one reason why we want these integration specialists, so they can go out and connect, check in and connect with the kids, and check in and connect with the parents and find out what those issues are, so that we can get them through the door, get them connected to someone who's going to show interest in them, and so they can become interested in school and in learning. So we welcome you at those meetings.
A short comment.
Direct response?
Yes.
Member Glass.
We have the opportunity with what we're doing with the schools to do a little more with what I would say making the hallways more receiving, rather than put plain paint on them. There could be some scenes that would be more accommodating, that when you came into the school, you would see things that looked familiar to you, not just doors and windows and bookcases, but actual. I'm thinking of the kind of decorations that would give anyone a feeling of belonging, rather than what we might see at the moment. And I would cite as an example, if you go into the American Indian Center in this building and look at the display cases that they've got there, that's the kind of thing that I think is one idea that could be duplicated at some of these schools. And I should also tell you that over the last year or so, I've been in there several times, and the director kind of thanks me for coming, and he says I'm the only school board that stops in there. So I would also encourage you to check it out yourself. And the idea is, this is the idea as to what needs to be where the students are. It doesn't do any good for the students that need to see this experience and know that this material exists to not have it at a school or at a building that they would feel comfortable with. And very few of those students, I get the feeling, come and visit the Indian Center here. It isn't the place that they would normally come, or a place that other than if they're in Unity or ALC, they wouldn't necessarily come to this building and see that information and those materials. I'd like to see those kinds of things be on display or a moving display through all of our schools, so that it became a real living function as to what the history of this area is and how it does relate to how we should be treating our citizens in a better fashion.
Direct response, Chair Grover.
Would you defer to Member Cameron and Member Sleep? Go ahead, Member.
Artifacts are important, but they do not replace a teacher who shows that they care about that student in the classroom and in the building. So I do appreciate your comments, and I do agree that artifacts are important.
Member Saliga-Ponko.
Well, I just wanted to say that Member Cameron had some very good comments about some of the things that our district is doing to help the achievement gap. And one thing I want to remind everyone is that we voted to have all-day kindergarten for all kids. And that, along with all of these other initiatives, I think is really going to help. I mean, I've heard over the years, early childhood, when kids start out behind, they just stay behind. They might keep moving up, but I'm really glad that we're doing that initiative with the integration specialists, but also the all-day kindergarten. I think that's going to make a huge difference for the kids. So I just want to mention that. And thank you, Member Cameron, because you did a great job describing that.
Superintendent.
I'd like to remind all of the board members that we have 4 cultural centers, and we do have collections of a number of artifacts and art in all of those cultural centers. And the role of the cultural centers is to actually get out and work in all of our schools and take those artifacts and cultural pieces with them. And it's an integral part of our curriculum across the district. My definition of tweak would be to stay the same course and add a few bells and whistles to it. I guess I would suggest to the board that on behalf of the staff, on behalf of all the group, as you mentioned, Mary, that's worked on this the past year, these interventions we're talking about are, in my judgment, a real change in course. We took some real courageous steps this year to reprioritize millions of dollars and use them differently in the district around all of the interventions you're talked about here. So that doesn't meet my definition of tweak. It has been pretty dramatic, I think, and I think the recommendations will have promise, and it's going to take some time to see how they pan out.
Thank you. Member Glass, did you say you had something about the discipline policy?
Yes, I wanted to withhold that item for discussion, and
go ahead.
This is the time to discuss it. I've looked at this policy with the idea that it's not only the school board and administrative team believe that a self-disciplined, self-respect-filled restorative culture is needed. That has to be spread and be believed in by the staff and the teachers. The staff and the teachers obviously are the ones that have to implement this policy. And when I read that in the introduction, I said to myself, well, where's the people that are going to be doing this? And so without that kind of a thought, and I have not jumped forward or fast forwarded to see where this issue is in the DFT contract, but it is a question I would have. Are the teachers, in fact, charged with implementing these policies that that go to the restorative issues, that go to a self-discipline, respect-filled culture for our students to follow. One of the things that frightens away our kids is the fact that a lot of inappropriate behavior is practiced in some of the schools. They are not welcomed, and they do encounter prejudice, multiple prejudices. So that goes part and parcel in solving our problem, is to make sure that our school discipline policy is broadened and has the features that allow it to be appropriately applied in a constructive fashion. There's a lot of issues in here now that seem to be penalty oriented, and I understand that, but I'm looking for the bright lights that takes that focus away from the discipline and makes it into a positive way to allow these kids to get along. Some of the elements that I learned from this policy were things like the required state notification of staff for students that behave or are engaged in violent behavior. Those kind of issues are things that I think the students themselves need to know about, so that they become aware of the bureaucracy and what they're fighting against if they do perform badly. Again, having the teachers and the staff be the main movers and the unified line of defense is what's needed, and I think something needs to be done to kind of mold this together, and I guess the charge is up to our new head of operations, Mr. Grunstedt, to make this all work. And so, not that I've spoken with him about this, but I will say that I have spoken to his predecessor, Dr. Joe Hill, because one of the issues that I discussed with him is the way we define fighting is as a violation. Fighting is mutual combat in which both parties have contributed to the situation by verbal or physical action. Well, that is an interesting definition of what fighting is. But as it turns out, in the solution of domestic problems that the city police department has engaged itself in, Duluth has become a leader in solving domestic problems where the parties don't get along, and they have become nationally known in determining something called the predominant aggressor, and that individual in a home situation is identified and removed from the home on a temporary basis to solve the problem and protect the family. That same idea is in fact applicable to the same issue that would occur in a school event where there was a fight that both parties aren't necessarily equally to blame. One is the predominant aggressor. Right now, our policy means that they're both punished equally. You don't make the distinction. And so I think that's counterproductive and is one of the areas where we could, in fact, learn from the nationally known police program that deals with this issue. So I wanted to mention that because it didn't get into this version of the manual after I had spoken to Joe Hill about it. So there are items in this policy, believe it or not, that I think relate very much to why we've got a big gap in some of our minorities and our high schools and middle schools. And it goes to how we implement this policy and how we would put it on a positive basis. So I would ask you to not only think of it from what it says, but also what it could be used for in a positive fashion.
I want to interject just one thing, and then we'll move on to Peter Witzig. There is a separate section with assault, which I think indicates, I don't want to dialogue on this right now, but assault is in there as a separate item, which I think indicates a party that's more guilty than the other party. But I don't want to get into a dialogue right now on that. Student Representative Witzig.
Thanks. Chair Grover, members of the board. Member Glass, I also read over this report, and at first, after reading the introduction, I was sort of thinking the same thing, like, where's the staff in this? But then when I got past the introduction, I noticed the section where I talked about the staff shall be responsible to the principal for implementing all necessary procedures, rules, and regulations to make effective the school board policies relating to the standards of student behavior. So I was actually pretty impressed with the staff's responsibility, and there's a section after that about all the responsibilities and the authorities that the teaching staff has. I've been impressed with the teaching staffs at our school, their discipline. I feel safe at school. I know not everyone feels that way, but I feel like we have a pretty safe school, and I was also impressed with the thoroughness of this policy.
Thank you, Peter. Member Saliga-Punko?
Well, I just want to mention, our teachers are actually trained in dealing with discipline issues. That is one of the things as a teacher, you learn how to control your classroom so you can teach. That is something, as a former teacher, we learned. So our teachers are doing a really good job in the classroom. Sometimes you do have a situation where maybe someone is out of control, but our secondary schools do have liaison officers that can step in too. But I want to say, really, I mean, it does come down to the classroom with the teacher, and then the principals and assistant principals support that. And then we as a board support the policies to support our staff. So it's pretty clear. I mean, and that is one thing. Teaching is not just standing in front of a classroom and lecturing. I think some people maybe think it is, but it is a lot more, just keeping kids focused, getting their attention, doing innovative projects, having respect for kids. But having control of your classroom is a huge part of teaching, and our teachers do a great job on that, and they're trained in it. So I just want to mention that, when you talk about some of those things, that we need to have, exactly how the police do it. I mean, we do have that backup in the schools. So just want to mention that.
I'll let Bill go.
Bill Gronseth?
Thank you. Although this report was written and submitted for the first reading before I was actually in the position, as a former principal and assistant principal, I'm pretty familiar with the policies. I just wanted to point out that many of the definitions of these behaviors are state definitions. So it's not necessarily just the district's policy, but we are using the state's wording. That is true with fighting as well. That's one of the state's definitions.
Superintendent?
So how are the children? That's an African proverb about how people greet each other. So how are the children? The reason I bring it up is there's another one that we need to ask. So how are the adults? The reality is our adults in our school system are caregivers to kids. And if the adults aren't healthy, then how can they be good caregivers to our students? So if you want to start talking, we could be here all night about restorative learning, responsive classroom, the work we've done in this district on the adult culture, because ultimately, so how are the adults? Early on when I came, we asked the adults, started with the principals and assistant principals, and then started working with our staff and asked, what behaviors have you seen between adults or behaviors that have happened to you? And just write those down. And if I showed you a list of those and said, what are they, you would say, well, that's how kids treat each other. And by the way, as two student reps, what I'm going to now say is true. You as students also know pretty clearly how adults treat each other in the building. And the reality is, unfortunately, there is also bullying, intimidation, isolation, and all of those things. Now, are we alone in that? No, every adult culture is. But I think we ought to also be given credit that we are one of the few school districts, and that's why we're on the national scene asking the question, so how are the adults? And I would love to put this on an education committee to update you on the work that we've done. It's why our labor management process is so important. It's about why we have to come together and find ways to solve problems together as adults. The teachers, the administration, the principals, and the board working together. Because if we ourselves as adults can't be restorative and responsive and build a culture based on that kind of environment, then we have no hope, in my judgment, about the student culture eventually. And I think that's another piece we need to add to this equation when you talk about that, Mr. Glass. I mean, and we will add this to an education committee. You know, I think at times we even get criticized because, wow, we're working so well with the adults in our organization. May even lead to the teacher contract tonight. But the reality is, if you can sit down together and solve reasonable problems together and find solutions together and give people a voice in the organization, then they feel better about working here and they feel better about contributing. Speaking of data, last year, 92% of our staff said they loved working for Duluth Public Schools. Okay? And I think at the end of the day, that's another piece to this total equation about what we're trying to change about our adult culture here in our organization and how we work together. Do we always agree? No. But we have committed to sitting down together and have our students see us working in a respectful, restorative way with each other to find solutions to opportunities, we call them, within the district. So I want to bring that up as well, and we'll add this to the education agenda because I will tell you, I believe that's some of the most important work we're doing in the school district that has significant change in the organization over time. So sure, we understand. I mean, I can show you pretty direct data, and you have it, that shows that students have moved to restorative conversations among the adults in the school. The referrals to the office are down, the discipline issues are down, the number of fights are down, and I can show you a direct correlation between the schools that are using restorative practice. And so I agree with you, Mr. Glass. The last thing we want to do is use a punitive approach and use scared straight as a tactic. But it starts, in my judgment, with the adult culture. We have to be healthy as adults first. So we'll add that to the education agenda so we can show you some of the important work and data we're collecting on what's going on within the adult culture within our organization and how that alone is impacting what happens in the classroom every day. If I've been bullied as a teacher before I walked into the classroom, then how good am I going to be that day when I work with my students? Okay? So we'll spend more time on this. I could spend all night talking about this one. This one's near and dear to my heart.
Thank you, Superintendent. Seeing no more lights on, all those in favor of the Education Committee report, except for the resolution which was already approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. That is approved unanimously. That brings us to the Human Resources Committee report. Member Cameron.
This is the Human Resources Committee report for Tuesday, July 20th. Under certified appointments, we have 4. There are 35 certified co-curricular, and there are 117 certified extensions. There are 4 certified leaves, 1 certified permanent increase, 3 certified retirements, and there are 69 certified summer school. There are 3 certified temporary decreases, 1 certified temporary increase, 1 non-certified appointment. And for non-certified demotions, there are 12. And there are 41 non-certified extensions. There are 11 non-certified layoffs, 2 non-certified leaves, 10 non-certified permanent decreases, 4 non-certified permanent increases, 2 non-certified promotions, 1 non-certified recall, 1 non-certified reclass, 1 non-certified resignation, 3 non-certified retirements, and there are 69 non-certified summer school, excuse me, 1 non-certified suspension, 1 non-certified temporary decrease, and 4 non-certified temporary increases. I'm going to move right on to our action items, if I may. The first one is 2A, approval of the interim individual contract, and I'd like to move that for approval.
Second.
The assistant superintendent contract has been, the interim assistant superintendent contract has been moved by Member Cameron and seconded by Member Saliga Punko. Seeing no lights on for the discussion, all those in favor of are you wanting to discuss this?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Chairperson. I had a question here on the pay schedule. I'm just curious here about, this is on page 5, item 7 on compensation. What was the previous Dr. Joe Hill's pay? Can anybody tell me that?
Tim Swirsky.
I'm sorry, can I hear the question again?
Sure, I was just curious about what the previous person's, Dr. Joe Hill, the assistant superintendent, what was his pay? Just comparing it here to what we're looking at here.
Correct. The other, I believe, Dr. Hill's salary for this last year that just completed was approximately like $130,000, right around that area. So it's significantly less.
So is this a decrease then?
Yes,
I take it?
Yes.
Okay, any reason for that decrease, or is it just do with newness? Or
It's an interim position, and there is some newness to the position, yes.
Also, board members, structurally, there's really two sides of the organization, as you know. The operational side of the organization that's headed by Bill Hanson, and the educational side, if you approve this, handled by Bill. 2 bills, by the way. So now I have to say Bill G or Bill H. But the point of all of that is, I also try to look at 2 different kinds of responsibilities, but both major roles within the school system. So I was trying to look at that range that Bill's also on as well, as we thought about this interim position.
Thank you. All right, let's go ahead and vote on this contract. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. That's approved unanimously. I don't see Mr. Gronseth in the room, but congratulations to him. And Member Cameron, do you have additional items for action?
Yes, I do. The second action item is 2B, termination of certified probationary, non-certified tenured staff. Whereas during the first 3 years of consecutive employment, all teachers in the public schools and cities of the first class are deemed to be in a probationary period of employment, during which period the school board may renew or not renew any teacher's annual contract. The school board shall see fit, and that the district will lack a sufficient number of pupils to support all non-tenured teachers currently employed by the district. Now, therefore, et cetera, there are 3 names listed. Be it further resolved, the clerk of the school board shall notify such teachers in writing before July 1st, 2010 of the termination of their employment. I'd like to move Resolution H.R. 710-2788, dated July 20, 2010. Second.
Thank you, Member Cameron. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Saliga Punko. Any discussion on this, Member Johnston?
Just kind of a clarification on this. Are these people going to be terminated? I guess that's what is happening, right?
Well, I did have my light on. I just did want to put a clarification. These names that you'll see on the resolution for B, C, and D have previously gone through the board. The only difference is at that time, some of these people have been offered summer school assignments or contract extensions. So really, for these 3 resolutions that you'll be approving, it is just changing their dates, either for layoff or termination.
Okay, again, does that mean they are still working in summer school, or is this just
Correct.
more of a technicality here, or laying them off?
It's more of a technicality. The original dates went through and ended at the last day of school. So now that they are continuing their summer school assignments or contract extensions, we did have to push those dates out to the conclusion of those periods.
Okay. At the conclusion of the summer, though, they will no longer be employed?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Member Casper?
Yes. What is the total, again, of for the termination of certified probationary, the total that the district from initial action to this point?
There would be two groups you'd be looking at. One would be non-tenured probationary teachers, and the other group, and they were terminated without recall rights. I don't have that number in front of me. For some reason, I'm thinking it was around 18 to 19 FTE. It might have been a few more people than that, but the total FTE. The second group was a group that went through that they were laid off. Essentially, they were terminated with recall rights. And I'm thinking that was a group of probably about 12 to 14. I would have to look.
Could you, when you get a chance, send that to me, and if all other board members are interested as well? So
I will do so.
Thank you.
Yeah, just might as well send it to all of us, Tim. Thank you.
Board members, excuse me, I'm thinking, we have a sheet that shows that we go over and sit down with the DFT that shows every position that was terminated, the funding stream, and sort of aligns to all the budgets. Why don't we send that sheet to all board members in the Friday packet? Because then it shows total FTE, but it also shows where they're coming from. Is it because of budget actions, decline enrollment? Is it because of grants ending? Is it because, what's the reason for the terminations? And there's one, I think it's on one page, isn't it? Let's put that page in the board packet, because I think that'll give you an explanation of total FTE and the funding stream and why.
Member Johnston?
Yeah, do these people have rehire rights then? Again, I'm still trying to figure out exactly what their status will be, if any.
On the group B, they were non-tenured, which would not have recall rights. Group C are hourly staff, and hourly positions come and go every year, so they are not recalled. But some of those are hired every year. And then Group D would have recall rights. I'm calling it Group D, but it would be Resolution D.
Pardon? Okay. All right. I don't see any further questions on this resolution, which is, again, the first one on termination of certified probationary non-tenured staff, change in dates. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. Okay, that passes 6-1 with Member Johnston voting no. Member Cameron, the next resolution.
The next resolution is termination of certified hourly staff, which also change in dates as stated there. Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, that the employment of the following hourly teacher shall terminate effective at the end of the school day on June 11, 2010, unless another date is indicated below, in which case the employment of the individual shall terminate on that date. Names are listed with the change of dates. I move Resolution HR 710-2789, dated July 20, 2010.
Second.
Thank you, Member Cameron, seconded by Member Saliga-Punko. Seeing no lights on for discussion of this resolution, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Passes 6-1 with Member Johnston voting no. Next resolution, Member Cameron.
Termination of certified tenure staff. Whereas enrollment in the school district is declining, whereas during the 2010-11 school year, the district will lack a sufficient number of pupils to support all tenured teachers currently employed by the district. Now, therefore, be it resolved, etc. Change in FTE, one name mentioned. I'd like to move Resolution HR 710-2790, dated July 20, 2010.
Second.
Okay, resolution moved by Member Cameron, seconded by Member Saliga-Punko. Member Glass.
Yes, what is the nature of this individual's license?
Music.
Music? And formerly, where did was this individual or engaged, employed?
Mr. Tim Sorsky.
High school. You're talking about location? Yeah, it was high school.
So now this is being credited to a declining enrollment rather than the big fill and the consolidation?
Correct.
And so how do you make the determination, the difference, the distinction from one to the other? Which of those are due to loss of students, and which of those are due to consolidation?
Essentially, during the staffing process, we do look at staffing on a ratio, and the ratio hasn't essentially changed. Music's a little bit of a different beast because of they're usually larger classroom sizes, but we assign the teachers into those groups and what are reasonable classroom sizes. So when all's said and done, and especially in music, it's a little different because you'll have orchestra, band, and choir. Some of them are multiply licensed or within those areas. But if the students, according to whatever type of ratio that we are staffing, are not there to support those teachers for that, then we do have to make a cut in those areas.
And this particular license is what?
I believe this is a multiple license for this group, but this is not a total. This is not a total decline. Out of a 1.0 FTE, this person is being reduced to 0.4.
So the remaining 0.6 is still in effect?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Board members, I'd like to clarify. There are no teaching positions lost because of the big fill or consolidation. The number of teaching positions lost are due to the following factors: decline enrollment, which is one item, simple dollars that we have to work with in our budget every year and decisions we make in the budget process. In this case, this year, we did not change the ratio, so there was really nothing in the budget process for reduction for teachers. So the only other option for declining or other than teachers would be specialized fundings that is terminated, that is ended, like a grant or some specialized program where deliberate funding was lost. Okay? Again, that's the only way teaching positions are changed. The board would have to vote to change the ratio as a budget consideration, which we did not do.
Member Casper.
Yes, so last month's, I don't have, anyway, Mr. Swirsky, from June 15th, I unfortunately was absent. It lists the total number of FTEs. So this one is in addition to these numbers?
This was a change, I believe, in the original one that went through was a 0.2 FTE reduction. It was a 0.4 FTE reduction.
So I added these up. This is the equivalent to 38.6, what was on our June 15th, 38.6 FTEs. This is, so it's 38.8 then, is that what you're saying?
That would be correct, yep.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on this resolution, termination of certified tenured staff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carries 5-2 with members Glass and Johnston voting no. Member Cameron, last resolution.
Duluth Federation of Teachers, Local 692 AFT, resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, Minnesota, that the collective bargaining agreement between Independent School District 709 and the Duluth Federation of Teachers, Local 692 AFT, a summary which is in the hands of all school board members, be approved and adopted for the period July 1, 2011 to June 30th, 2013, inclusive, and that the chairperson and clerk of the school board be hereby authorized to execute said agreement on behalf of the school district. I move Resolution HR 710-2792, dated July 20th, 2010. Second.
Thank you, Member Cameron. And resolution moved, or excuse me, seconded by Member Saliga-Punko. Member Wasson.
I'd just like to comment on this. I would like to thank Frank Warner and Superintendent Dixon for working through this contract. Since Dr. Dixon has been in our district, it has been a new, an amazing thing for teachers that they have a settled contract before the contract comes to arbitration or anything like that. And I know, Tim, I thank you to you too, but to all those folks that are involved in it, I commend you. Having traveled the state, I see that many teacher units are still questioning their contracts, and again, I think it's a culture that's been built through communication, through transparency, through openness, and I thank you very much as a board member. It really helps our job.
Member Johnston.
I've got some questions here. Is this some clarifications? I'm not sure who to address that to, but whoever can do it, I'll kind of got a few of them here.
What I'd just like to add, though, is this contract is not public until it is approved. So we had sent out some cost-out sheets and an overview. Without knowing the nature of your questions, you can ask those questions, but this may not be the appropriate forum to answer them in.
Okay, back on page 25, there's quite a bit of change on the health benefits here, the health insurance. One of the changes is that the district will now contribute 100% for 100% for single coverage. In the past, on the previous page, it was only $795. They would contribute, so I'm just trying to figure out the difference between...
Excuse me, Member Johnston, I think we have an issue of, we had an opportunity for a closed session to discuss, you're getting into items that have been negotiated, and if you had wanted to discuss these, it was wide open to have a closed session before the meeting this evening, and I don't believe that request was made. Would you agree with that?
I would agree.
So I'm not sure what to say. We're not going to be negotiating this contract publicly. That's flat out wrong and inappropriate.
If it's clarification of some of the language, and again, if the vote will take place tonight, but after the fact, I can certainly clarify what your questions would if you would like to submit them to me.
I guess that most of my questions are of similar nature here, explanation here. Contrary to what I've heard here, this has not been debated by this board. This has not been, first time I've seen this was at the last business meeting we had. It was alluded to at a special meeting. We did not see it. And consequently, going through this, I first received it at the business meeting, did not have time to go through, and I've consequently got quite a few questions about it. And if we can't even ask these questions, I'm not quite sure why we're here.
The contract was, the red line contract was sent out prior to our Monday HR committee meeting. It was the week prior to that with a cover letter that asked for any questions you may have prior to that meeting, and then also additionally it was asking for a request for a closed meeting prior to this meeting tonight for other questions that needed to be debated as a school board group.
Member Cameron?
I'd like for us to move on, with all due respect to Member Johnston. We're moving into an area that we should not. This has not been approved by the board. We do not negotiate contracts out in the public, and I just want to warn us that we are going into areas that we should not be going into right now.
Superintendent?
You know, interesting. I mean, we do a lot of work and pride ourselves on process and systems work around here. I want to remind the board, first of all, we had a close working session with the board on setting parameters for negotiations prior to meeting and working with the teachers union on this contract. And you gave me direction in terms of the parameters that you were comfortable negotiating the contract in. This contract is consistent with the parameters you gave me that evening to work within. Okay. I also want to say this, and thank you, Member Wasson, for your comments. First of all, the other thing we've done is we've worked hard to open up our books and make sure that everyone knows where every dime is that we spend. And we sit down with and by the way, our unions do the same thing. They have their own books. And when we sit down with the union and go through the books, and they can say, yes, we agree, and our numbers show exactly the same expenses. So everyone agrees on where every dollar is being spent, first of all. This isn't a process of sort of like a used car salesman going in and trying to negotiate a deal. We put all the information on the table. Second of all, the reality is all of our employee groups and specifically teachers, do understand that today, because we haven't seen cost of living raises from the legislature, everyone knows clearly that the money we have is either going to be in the pockets or in a benefit or in class size. I mean, everyone knows how much we've cut our costs of administration in this district over the last number of years. And so the reality is, I can tell you, in working in all of our contracts, every one of our groups has an interest, particularly in how to control health care costs. Because we know if we put it in health care, then it's either coming out of salary or it's increasing class size ultimately. Everyone knows that. And so the reality is there's a vested interest on the part of our bargaining units to try to find a reasonable solution. Just think about this for a minute. If I take too big a raise, the result of that is, as a board, we have to cut more teachers, which increases the class size, and it is worth the raise we get. But while at the same time, we have to think about cost of living for our employees, and it's a balance. It's a hard discussion. Everyone knows that. You know, the fact of the matter is, and we have given you the sheets, we can give them to you again, exactly what the PEEP changes were, how much that saved the district, what the next 12 months was, and I will tell you it's single digits in terms of increase versus the double digits we saw in health care with any of the providers we've had the last number of years. Our employees had to have more out of cost expense. I should know I get to pay them, along with everyone else. So the reality is, I think, in all fairness to some of the things you hear, we have a committee works full-time to try to figure out how to reduce our healthcare costs, because we know that. So I think when you're looking at this overall concept, please understand that. None of us are pleased with the changes we've seen in healthcare, as any business has been. If you're a private business owner, you're dealing with this same issue across this country. So I think we're doing some good work on it, and that insurance committee continues to meet. We're trying to find every human way we can to figure out how to control our costs and yet provide quality benefit to our employees. So I just want you to know that overall in terms of concept of what's going on in the discussion.
Member Glass.
Yes, as a member of the duly constituted negotiating committee for this contract that in fact didn't participate in the negotiations, I've been quite interested in the process and seeing how it plays out. And I'm interested to see how the terms are consistent with the parameters that we laid out in the closed session, because it would appear to my calculations that they were changed somewhat. The present contract was negotiated and ended up needing an additional $3 or $4 million, which means we had a deficit for the 2-year period of that amount. If this present contract goes through, and if the money settled are for an additional $3 or $4 million, that'll add to the deficit for those coming years. How do we reconcile not having an increase with spending the money that we don't have? That's a rhetorical question. And not having been in the negotiations with the teachers, or not even know who did the negotiating other than the principal, the superintendent, I feel at a loss of being able to understand the process. Now that we're a full 12 months ahead of where we need to be, it's very, very interesting that we have a crystal ball that is perfectly clear, that tells us we can go into debt, or at least go into the red by another approximately $3 million or $4 million for an equivalent amount of increases that we saw for the last contract. and do that 12 months ahead of time. I would like to not have to place any bets on this that I'd have to pay if I had to take this money out of my own pocket. And so, not being a betting fellow, would be happier to see us closer to the time in which the contract needs to be implemented before I agree to put out an additional several $1 million that puts us into deficit. We have no understanding that we're going to get additional monies for paying these contracts. How can we simply wander out and agree without conditions that this board is spending the public's money wisely? I don't have that feeling at the present time, and I feel some obligation as being a duly designated member of the negotiations committee, which didn't meet, to complete this negotiation. So that's where I'm at.
Member Glass, for last contract and this contract, there were cost sheet summaries. To my knowledge, there's been no overrun in the millions of dollars. They've pretty much come in right where we thought they would. So I'm not familiar with the numbers that you're speaking of in the 3 to 4 million.
Member Casper.
Yeah, I share some similar concerns, more so from the fact that we're laying off 38.6 teachers. And to those 38.6 folks, or however many it actually happens to be, they don't have the opportunity to enjoy this contract. They don't have the opportunity to enjoy doing what their chosen profession is. And it concerns me, and I'd like a better understanding of how we chose those positions based on numbers in those numbers in each of those select areas. And now I can't find my notes on it, but it's FIED teachers and art teachers and elementary ed teachers and math teachers and so on. And we've eliminated those folks' positions, and we're talking about increasing our costs. And to my way of thinking, and I know talked about morale and things like that, and I understand that, but at the same time, I have concerns about the message that we send to the public of this community, to the taxpayers of this community, if we approve a wage increase at the same time we're laying teachers off, at the same time we've asked for a line of credit to borrow money, and at the same time we've told the public that we're going to spend another $5.3 million on the long-range facility plan. And it just does not seem to fit for me that we're talking about increasing costs when we're already spending over what we've been allocated or what we've been blessed with from the taxpayers of this community. So if somebody can enlighten me on that, I would appreciate that, and I would like to be a little bit more informed about what this ramification is down the road. I understand we can't talk about it in the public, and I accept that, but if we can talk about the ramifications, I mean, if these approvals go forward and our money from the state stays constant, from my way of thinking, we're looking at additional layoffs next year, if all things stay the same, and I can be enlightened on that, and into 2013, additional layoffs again if all things stay the same. And if I'm one of those teachers, or if I'm one of those parents who has one of those teachers that has changed my child's life, that impacts me, that impacts my community. So I'm asking for clarification, I'm asking for understanding.
May I respond?
Make sure you let them know it's going to be worse next year.
I guess some of this, I guess, is somewhat philosophical. Why do we have local boards of education in America? Why don't we just have a federal curriculum and a federal, this whole thing put together, or a state, and in fact, negotiations is done for any group as at a state level or national level. The issue is this. The reason we have local boards of education starts back to our history is sort of the Little Red Schoolhouse. Basically, when it started out, for all practical purposes, students were homeschooled. Community got together and said, you know what, instead of us homeschooling our children, why don't we agree to get together and hire a teacher and have them teach our kids what we think they ought to know and be able to do. Now, the reason that's important in this discussion to me is this. The reality is, and that second part is very important, what we want them to know and be able to do. You see, the curriculum in Kansas is much different than the curriculum in Minnesota. The curriculum in Minnesota will vary by region. So one of the major obligations of a board is to adopt the scope and sequence of curriculum of what representing the community you want your students to know and be able to do. But the other piece is, in essence then, all of us who work for you are professionals that you hire to provide a service to, and while some of us are parents to the community students. So the question becomes for you as a board, how are you going to pay that teacher? And the rhetorical question, I guess, is, should any teacher expect to see a cost of living raise for the services that they provide for your students? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then what the board needs to do is figure out, in essence, how you're going to come up with the money to pay our staff for professional services offered to the students of this district. You have two choices. One, work with the legislature. Two, help pass a local levy to support education. So at the local community, and by the way, there is a state expectation that local communities will contribute. Now, I will show you all the data, but also says, while I appreciate what this local community does, if you normalize it for net tax capacity, the ability to pay, and you look at our district, taking both the local levy of what we now have, which is about $364 per pupil, and what that is in taxes, plus the long-range facility plan and what that is in taxes, and add them together, our local support for learning is well below the state average. And in fact, it's below the state. We're not even average compared to the 36 outlying school districts that are 9,000 community size or more. Now, if staff was walking in here, staff understands things are tight. The economy struggled. And I think that's reflected in these agreements. Trying to be reasonable about that. But I think that the other question is, what is this community going to do to support all the people who work on your behalf to support the students who come here? Okay? If you're working for an employer yourself, is it reasonable that you would expect somehow to be cost of living? Now, the reality is we all understand, and people are trying to work for less. And these are, by the way, are modest. If you look at the contract we just finished early, and look at where we're going to end up as the state average for contracts across this district, we're in the bottom half. That's the other piece to this equation. So it's a balance. But I think as a board, the next discussion is back to learning. It's not a matter of, well, what's the state going to give us? It's that, but also what are we going to do locally as citizens to pay our staff for the professional service to educate students in this district in the future, knowing the contribution. I see Sam sitting out here. He presented the same information to the board, I remember, in a meeting when you got up here and stood at the microphone and encouraged the board to go for a local levy this fall, in fact. I'm not telling you something that hasn't been talked about in a lot of circles. So I guess that's the rest of it. It's the balance. What I'm seeing is people are trying to be reasonable about that. We're all working hard to reduce our costs on insurance. And I don't know what else to say, but that's the flavor of the discussion.
Member Johnston.
Yes, I have first to read something from the Duluth paper again. I understand why this was. When I first read this today, I was a little bit concerned. The bottom line was the terms of the contract aren't available to the public until it's been approved by the board. Of course, I read that, and actually I called up the reporter and asked her, I said, what? And she confirmed that that is the case, and now I find out here tonight that apparently seems to be the opinion here too. I've also heard here tonight that this has already been negotiated, that the negotiations are done. So now if we pass this tonight, which I'll be voting against for the reasons will be telling you here, I have a lot of them. If we're past this, 1 second after we pass it, suddenly this information can be given to the reporter and to the public here that is actually wondering what's going on. At this point, nobody knows. I can't even talk about numbers. And the negotiations are done. For us to now say that we can't talk about the numbers once the negotiations are done, that's completely wrong. And I'd like to have a legal opinion. Do we have our attorney here today? Apparently not.
We do.
I am here, and I'm not prepared to give an opinion on that, sir. Okay. I appreciate your honesty. I would like to read this here. And again, this was from a hearing, ruling from the Department of Administration this spring on a March hearing. And it said, and I'll just read part of it, a newspaper reported, it was reported in the Duluth paper, Minnesota school districts must share tentative employee contracts with the public before the employees and school boards vote on the contracts. And I think it's quite clear that there's no doubt that if we go ahead and do not inform the public of what we're doing, we can't even discuss this. I mean, we're violating this, and I think that's totally inappropriate. I don't have any, I want to make it very clear that I want to do the best thing that we can for our teachers too. But we have to do it in a proper manner. We have to follow the law, and at this point, I don't think that we are. And to me, I'm really appalled when people say we can't even talk about this. We're going to vote on this. We don't know how much, the public doesn't know how much money it is. Negotiations are all done. What's the problem? I don't understand this at all, that we can't talk about it. There's no more negotiations. We either vote it yes or no right now. So why can't we talk about this? Negotiations are done.
Chair Grover.
Member Cameron.
It has not been approved, and I just read the same article that Member Johnston read, and I am in total disagreement as far as what Member Johnston has said. This Department of Administration opinion is not binding, and the last paragraph is not binding, and so they are deferring this to the courts. So doesn't mean anything. I mean, I take it differently. Maybe we're not reading the same article, but the very last paragraph states their opinion is not binding.
Yeah, it says the Department of Administration's opinions are non-binding. Minnesota courts, however, must give deference to its opinions. And are we putting ourselves up to another court, another lawsuit here by just being foolish and charging ahead and not telling our public what we're even talking about here? I mean, this is just totally, to me, this is unbelievable that we're going to vote on something. I mean, why can't we talk about this? Everywhere, we know how much the city people were negotiating 6 months before the contract was settled. That was reported in the papers everywhere. Every union negotiations, these are public things, are told to the people. And for not to do this, I mean, I have no idea why this board, this administration is taking that we can't even discuss this. But to me, it is just unbelievable. That's my first point. My second point is This is 1 year ahead of time. We just passed the last contract only 1 year ago. These are 2-year contracts. We are passing this 1 year ahead of time. Why? I don't question the integrity and the hard work that has went into this, the people that are doing this. What I'm questioning is the process and why we're doing this, not the integrity of the people that are doing it. I'm questioning why aren't we discussing it 1 year ahead of time. It's not necessary. Our budget is not known right now. Next year we know our budget. The budget is flat. The biennial budget from the state is flat. Contrary to what was said, 95% of our school money comes from either the state or the feds. It does not come from local levies. A local levy is not going to bail out this district. And consequently, in another year's time, the budget will come up from the state. We don't know what that budget is. We're passing something 2 years down the line. We don't know. Everything we've heard is that the state revenues are going to be down. There was a fight this year to keep what we had. The schools have been, the Minnesota Department of Education has been pulling us back, delaying getting the money that we have. And for us to go ahead 1 year ahead of time when we don't even know what's going on is really very, very foolish, and I think very foolish. Again, I'd like to bring up the negotiation committee. Our bylaws, which we're supposed to follow, 9045 says the negotiating committee shall obtain necessary certification for representation and be in charge of wage negotiations and meet and confirm meetings with employee groups. Periodic reports of progress and recommendations shall be made to the school board. That has not happened. We have violated our bylaws. Not only are we violating the administrative rulings on this, we're also violating our own bylaws by not being open and talking about it. I've also heard that this follows the constraints that we put on. We had one closed meeting. We had one paragraph that was talked about. The increases that I see here that I can't talk about are 50% higher than we were told that were there. If we include the health benefits, they're approximately 4 times higher than we were told they're going to be. So this does not follow the parameters that we as a board were given. It is way, way off, and for me not to be able to talk about it is just almost unbelievable. Nobody on this board negotiated this, again, which is in violation of our bylaws. We haven't sat down together as a board and negotiated this. We've been told that the negotiations are done and this is it. And this just, to me, again, it's hard to believe. Again, I'd like to say that the city employees, they've had a 0% increase for the last, 3 years. I'm not advocating that. That is really, really very, very bad. I want to give increases wherever I can to the people, but I'd much rather not be laying off 38 people, as we just talked about here, than go ahead and give everybody a pay raise. And then, we're going to give you a pay raise, and we're going to lay 38 more of you off. That is just very, very foolish. So if we're talking about teachers and the goodness for our children, we better be looking at the big thing and not just talking about, let's see how much of a pay raise we can give them. One other thing here, this year, this is known information. We had a $4 million budget shortfall. Of that $4 million, almost $3 million that was directly related to wage increases and or health benefit increases. The other one was due to declining student enrollments. Now, not only we're having a higher increase than we did back then, so we're going to be even more this year, the next budget, we're going to have even a bigger budget shortfall than we did now. And so here we are. We can't even talk about it in public. We're going to have the same situation. We have not solved anything at all, except we're going to be losing more employees. We're going to be losing more teachers. And we have to do a better job with this. We have to be open about this, and we have to talk to the public and be honest and get some integrity back to the public. And for all those reasons and many more, I'll be voting against this, and I urge the board to do this because this is very, 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 very out of line, and I think illegal what we're doing.
Member Saliga Temple.
Thank you, Chair Grover. I just want to put my 2 cents in on this. Having been a teacher in this district many years ago, sitting in this room where the teachers were close to going on strike, I really appreciate, I want to echo Member Wasson's comments because I have never seen such support from our teaching staff for this district and for our administration. It's unheard of. in this district. Usually it was a lot of animosity going on between our staff and administration, and I have appreciated in the last 5 years, having seen it either from a teacher or a parent PTA member, that this has been a wonderful collaboration. And I know the teachers, I mean, I think this is probably almost unheard of, being able to settle. But when you look at it in Duluth, we were always late. I can remember 1 year where they settled and it already was expiring, was finishing. So it was almost 2 years late. We don't want to go there. This has been really well done, and I appreciate all the work that you have done on this, Superintendent Dixon, because the teachers out there really respect our administration, and it wasn't like that for many years. So I really appreciate all the work that's gone into the labor relations, because it is an incredible team that we have now, and that's why we're moving forward and we're doing such great things as a district. Some of the initiatives that we've added, the new math curriculum, I mean, we're doing great things, and I really appreciate everything, and the teachers have really given a lot of input, and I know they feel appreciated. So just want to say that, and I think we are ready to move on.
Member Wasson.
I don't want to prolong the discussion anymore, but I don't want the public to perceive that this was not talked about with the board. The parameters were set by the board in closed session, and we were given the information in due time, and actually I think 2 or 3 times asked and told if we had questions or if we wanted to go in closed sessions prior to this board meeting, we could do so for those types of questions. And what I value is that all of us have had the say in the negotiation process as we've directed the superintendent and the human resources person to go for us. So we no longer have a negotiations committee per se. It's each one of us as board members that we're able to agree on the parameters. So I don't want the public to, for one moment, believe that there wasn't opportunity and time for any of us to talk about this.
Member Johnston.
I disagree with that entirely. It was not opened, and what we were given, the parameters were changed dramatically over what we gave them when I forgot this. I'd like to make a motion to table this due to the questionable legalities that surrounding this, and we've already had a question that the attorney can't answer. I think it's imperative that this board get an legal opinion, and whether or not so we don't again get dragged into court again. All we have to do is do this right, and I'm asking for this. Pardon me. I made a motion to table this.
Second.
Motion to table by Member Johnston, seconded by Member Glass.
Yeah, pardon me, Mr. Chairman. I did talk more after I gave the motion to say why, so I'll make it short. I think because the legalities here, it's absolutely imperative that we table this. I think we can do a better job. We have to tell our publics here what we're doing. And again, I'm not opposed to labor relationships. This has to be done in an open, transparent manner, and has not been done. So I'm asking the board here to table this.
All right. All those in favor of the motion to table, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. No. That fails 3-4. Member Casper.
So here's the dilemma in my mind. If we approve this contract and if we move ahead with this using these numbers that are given to us that nobody else can see, and if everything else stays the same, we are in essence approving about, based on what our current cost is per teacher in the course of 2 years, if everything else stays the same. Our class sizes stay the same, exact same amount of enrollment, our income stays, or our money that we receive from the state and all of our, everything stays the same, right down to what it costs to turn this light bulb on. Stays the same. We, by approving this contract, in my way of thinking, and I can be told if that's different, we are in essence approving about 30 additional teachers losing their jobs. if everything else stays the same, just to pay for it. And that, to me, is a dilemma. Do I want to see less teachers in the district? No. Do I want to see us be able to offer the robust curriculum that we've talked about when we're cutting art teachers and we're cutting those kinds of things that create the robust curriculum that we've all heard about and talked about? So if we approve this contract as it sits, in my simple math, and I probably could use the new math, maybe more than other people in this room, but if we approve it, and my way of looking at these numbers would tell me that based on what our average cost per teacher is, we are in essence approving the additional elimination of 30 positions, give or take, if everything stays the same. And I have trouble with that. Are we doing a disservice to our students and the families of this district by doing that?
I have got to say something before we vote. This exercise that you've all been listening to by the board is probably about as inappropriate a discussion as I have ever heard in relationship to a negotiated labor management agreement. We have 3 board members expressing concerns and objections, and each and every one of them in the last 5 to 7 days explicitly declined to have a closed session to air their concerns. And I think this display, I'm going to characterize it as grandstanding. I think it is disgusting, it's embarrassing, and inappropriate and wrong. And I hope it doesn't repeat itself in the future. Let's go ahead and vote.
Yes, will repeat itself in the future. We have, this board has been insulted and insulted the city. Are you going to recognize me, or are you going to cut me off?
He's talked for the last 30 minutes.
I've had this, I had my light on ever since you've been speaking.
Opportunities to make your opinions.
We are having a debate, and you've made some serious, nasty accusations. I want to answer those. I think I'm entitled to have a debate, or is this just Tim Grover out there doing whatever he wants to do and not caring what the rest of the people, citizens of Duluth want?
Member Johnston, you have had more than adequate opportunity to air your opinions.
Yeah, I did not hear the nasty accusations from you about us because we speak up. That's totally inappropriate, and I demand a right to answer that.
Member Johnston, it's time to vote.
No, it isn't. You're being extremely rude and nasty. Point of order, the chair is violating it.
Opposed, say no. Resolution passes 4-0 with 3 abstentions. We're going to take let's reconvene at 5 minutes to 9. We're going to take a recess.
Can I just move the rest of the report?
I'm sorry, let's do that first.
Okay. I'd like to move the remaining of the HR committee report. Second.
All right. Is there any further discussion on the HR report? Member Johnston.
Yes, this board is being extremely rude, ignoring the people of Duluth they have for the last 2 or 3 years. It's a continuation of the extremely poor performance. And I just am very appalled at this board, particularly by the chairperson saying that we cannot have discussions. It's hard to believe that this is a school board following any rules of order, and we can't have discussions. When we have discussions, you blame us because, we're grandstanding. Gee, if you didn't know, we happen to represent the people in Duluth, and we are representing them. That's what boards are for, is to have discussions. And I find it very appalling and totally inappropriate. I'll be asking for your resignation as a chairperson because of your inability to even have discussions. I'll send that prior notice here. We will make a notice of that with agenda items. I ask the chairperson to step down because he doesn't know how to run meetings.
Member Cameron?
I believe that the chair said that your conversation was inappropriate. And I really take offense, Member Johnston, when you say that this board denies you an opportunity to speak when we've sat here for the past 15, 20 minutes and listened to you speak. Chair Grover said the conversation, the topic of discussion was inappropriate, and I agree with him.
All right. Accusations that we were grandstanding and being nasty, so that was a personal insult toward me.
The remainder of the HR report has been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. That carries unanimously. We are on recess until 5 minutes to 9.
started here with Bob Boyd and Jerry Hack. Right. I joined that from 1990. Boyd Ag. Dick was quite involved in the school board. Oh, yeah. And the school board is he and I were pretty close for several years. And then after that, Bob Boyd, property foundation and Jerry Ag. Right. Kind of took that to Mark. Yeah, well, I've had a great relationship with Mark. His ability to gain knowledge of contracts.
See, this was a but based on savings and healthcare costs, we basically said we all realized a lot of savings. District keeping up with savings.
Since January, I was here in December. Since January, it's been like well, this question was
no, but that's the one where the one we're going to does not have a savings provision.
Under the rules that we can
Move on with the meeting. The next item on the agenda is the Business Committee report. Member Wasson.
The Business Committee report for July 20th, 2010. Item 1 is a financial report. 2 is bids, RFPs, quotes. There are several quotes, district-wide disposable air filters, district-wide refrigeration repair services. Item 3 is policies and regulations. There are none. Contracts is 4. Item 4A1, you board members received an update on the workers' compensation and property liability. Change orders at Ordine, the new Eastern High School. Laura MacArthur. Item 5, we have several resolutions. And if it would be all right with you, would you like me to take those now, Chair Grover, or?
Why don't you finish the report and we'll come back and do the resolution.
Okay.
Do the resolutions first.
Okay. We have several different resolutions and then informational items following.
Okay. Now let's move into the resolutions. Member Wasson.
The first is on page 69. Resolution authorizing the district to enter into a line of credit agreement with a financial institution. I will not read the whole thing. Upon the effective date of this resolution, the district hereby agrees to enter into the agreement with the bank and thereby establish a revolving line of credit with the bank whereby the bank will advance funds to the district. The agreement shall have a term not exceeding 5 years. I move resolution B710-2794.
Second.
Thank you, Member Wasson. Seconded by Member Saliga-Plonko. Member Johnston.
I've got some concerns about this resolution and the next, all the 3 resolutions here. I believe this is what was been alluded to about issuing new bonds. Is that correct? Could somebody maybe tell me, correct me then, what these are all about? Mr. Hanson?
This item that you're discussing right now that's on the table is a resolution authorizing the district to enter into a line of credit. Basically, this becomes our vehicle to work through short-term cash flow situations that are challenging all districts in Minnesota at this point, or at least most of them, I should say, based on the items we've discussed before relative to how the state of Minnesota is withholding some of our payments and giving us an IOU on that. And so when we look at our own cash flow situation, we have peaks and valleys during the year. In addition, you should understand that the normal stream of payments from the state basically assumes that the district incurs significantly fewer expenses in the summer. And while school isn't on, that's just not a true statement because many of our staff are paid over a 12-month period. We still have expenses for summer school and things like that. So you passed this same resolution in February. The maximum interest rate cited on that resolution at that time was 2.95%. I increased it here to 3.25% just because I don't know where interest rates are going to be going. And while they're still under 2.95, I just wanted to put this in front of you at this point. Hopefully you get favorable consideration, and that would allow me the most flexibility in terms of being able to deal with any cash flow issues that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Yeah, so I thought we're on a different one here, so I support this, and I think it's something we have to do, and so I certainly support this. Thank you.
Member Glass.
Could you just tell us roughly what the amount of money you may expect to borrow and what's going to cost us? Just in rough terms.
The last rate I had, and again it changes every day, was 2.89%. That'll depend on when and if we actually borrow the money. Right now I've asked for, these are very short-term borrowings, maximum period is 6 weeks, and I've asked them to consider us for $1.5 million, which based on what we spend in a week or in a month is a small number. That's where I'm at right now.
So that 1.5 million would be an approximate amount for a single event. a short-term shot, and that would cost us 1% or some number like that?
Roughly 2.89% based on the last rates I'm familiar with.
That's an annual rate?
That's an annual rate, correct.
Right. So for a short time, it'll only cost a twelfth of that? If it were a month?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Member Johnston.
Another clarification I think would be appropriate for the public here, kind of why we've had to do this. I know we've talked about it a lot. You've explained it very well to the board. Briefly, if you could tell them a little better than me, but basically the state is withholding money due to their cash flow problems, and you're getting your money late. Consequently, you've had to take short-term loans out, this being one way to do that, to be able to hold that. You know the money's coming, but it's just been delayed due to budget shortfalls in the state. Could you maybe just explain a little bit better than I could, just so the public knows why we're in this situation, which is not a good situation?
I'd be glad to. Basically, we're dealing with two situations. Last March and April, we dealt with a cash flow situation at the state where they, by statute, withheld payments to school districts. We normally get payments from the state twice a month. They withheld 3 payments in a row in March and April to us. That puts obviously a significant crimp in what we can do, and that was the first time we did some short-term borrowing. That money that was withheld in March and April was repaid fully by the state at the end of May, and at that point in time we repaid our short-term line of credit borrowings that we had. The other issue, so we have that state cash flow situation as one. The second item is basically the state budget situation, and if you go back a couple of years, the withholding in terms of the aid that the state had committed to us, they withheld for the past several years 10% of what they owe us. And so basically at the end of the year they would pay us 90% of what they owed us through the year, and basically we'd have an IOU for the other 10%. This past year that just ended for us, June 30th, that amount was increased again to balance the state budget. That amount was increased to 27% withholding, so it virtually tripled from where it was. And this coming year that we're in now, the withholding will go from 27% to 30%. And so it's gone up again. Those are items specifically to fix the state budget. And at that point then, again, with that size of withholding for us, which is now over $22 million in terms of what the IOU is, it's just difficult for us depending on, while we can get by most of the time despite that, we'll go through peaks and valleys with our own cash situation that require us to do some short-term borrowing. I would add to the board, to my prior comments, that based on the cash flow projections over the next several months, there will be no issue in us paying this back when the state payments get caught up a little bit here.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Hanson. It's kind of a shame we're put in that way, but it does show the dire straits that the state is in. Makes us, all of us, worried here if they can't even get their payments on time. What's going to happen next? But thanks for that explanation. I do support this because it's something you have to do.
All those in favor of the resolution authorizing the line of credit agreement, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Carries 7-0. Next resolution, Member Watson.
This is the item found on page 70, resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of full-term certificates of participation, Series 2010C, in the amount not to exceed $3,675,000 to finance a portion of the long-range facility plan. This was a lengthy, hearty conversation that we had with Bob Tofty, I believe. So I move resolution, where is it? B710-2795.
Second. All right, resolution moved by Member Watson, seconded by Member Cameron. Is there discussion? Member Johnston?
Yes, I'm opposing this resolution. I don't think this is necessary. Again, this is going on, and a part of that review and comment, the amendments on the red plan, which I've opposed very strongly. Not only that, it's increasing the debt load. We could also be not doing some of these things, which I think we should. So I'm opposed to this, and I do have a point of information. Just a question on here, and maybe Mr. Tofty could answer this, but what percentage of the bond, the people that generate the bonds, make the bonds, they make a percent, right? Could you tell me typically what percent a bond company, their amount is?
Chair Grover, Superintendent Dixon, members of the board, my name is Bob Tofty. I'm the bond counsel for the district. Is your question the purchaser of the bonds, what typically would they require for an underwriter discount?
Yeah, I mean, no, how much when we put out a bond, so a company comes in and they generate that, they get the bond, to get whatever they do to get the bond and get it out on the market and get sold. They make a commission, I believe. I was just wondering what that commission
This is the purchaser of the bond?
Yeah.
As opposed to the financial advisor?
Right, I mean, right.
The purchaser of the bond bids and typically takes an underwriter discount, and it varies depending on the issue. Sometimes it's less than 1%, sometimes it's 1%, sometimes it's a little bit more, but it would be roughly 1%.
Yeah, just curious on that. That was my only question there.
Member Casper?
Just for clarification, Mr. Hanson, has this money already been spent? I think I asked that, and my understanding is this has already been spent.
Spent, I would say it has, while it
dedicated
has not been spent because we have not, completed every item on the plan at this point in time.
But dedicated.
The
guy next to you is nodding, so.
Again, we still have two projects at the end that, again, we're less far along. So I'd have to reconcile this exactly. To say that certainly a majority of the money, or a significant majority of the money has been committed is a fair statement, but there still are projects at Congdon Park and Grant that have not been, bid, if you will, yet.
Thank you.
Member Glass?
This money is also planned to be invested, so it will make some interest before it gets spent. I think I saw that referred to in the MDE approval, that not only will we borrow this money, but we'll plan to make some interest on it.
Well, all of the construction funds from bond proceeds are invested until costs are incurred and bills paid. So there will be some investment income because the size of the issues are relatively small. It's a relatively small amount, $30,000-ish for the $3 million as an example.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on this resolution authorizing the issuance and sale, et cetera, of bonds not to exceed, or certificates of participation not to exceed $3.675 million. All those in favor of the resolution say aye. Aye. Opposed say no.
No.
That carries 5-2 with members Glass and Johnston voting no. Next resolution, Member Wasson.
Resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of certificates of participation Series 2010D in an amount not to exceed $1,605,000 to finance a portion of the long-range facilities plan. I move B710-2796.
Second.
Thank you, Member Wasson. Seconded by Member Saliga-Panco. Member Johnston.
I'd like to amend this to have this put up for a referendum on the next general election.
Second.
I'm going to move. Can
I have the rewording of that?
Member Johnston, could you repeat the wording and restate that, please?
Sure. I make a motion to amend this. Add a paragraph on the end, excuse me, where it's at.
Page 80.
Back on page 87 at the end of all the other paragraphs, amend that to say that this will be put up for a referendum in the next general election.
Mr. Tofty, sounds like it's deja vu. You want to address that issue?
This type of financing does not have a referendum. So it would not be a referendum that would be permitted under this statute to proceed. You know, there is a bond referendum if you chose to do a general obligation bond. There's a section in the statute that would permit that, but not under this statute.
So a referendum on this would be strictly advisory?
That's correct.
And there's no statutory authority for school districts to hold advisory referenda? Therefore, this motion is out of order.
Just that we are still debating this. We haven't...
the motion is out of order, so...
No, it's not out of order. That's totally ridiculous. I have a motion here to amend this, put this up for a referendum. If it's binding or not, I don't care. I made a motion, it was seconded.
Member Johnston, the motion is out of order.
Give me some reasons. Point of order, I'd like to have reasons for the chair and why he's ruling this out of order.
The reasons were just stated because there's not a referendum authorized by statute for this type of an issuance. Therefore, it would be an advisory referendum only. School districts in Minnesota have no authority to hold advisory referenda. Therefore, the motion is out of order.
Appeal the decision of the chair.
State your, I believe that needs a second.
Yes, it does.
Second.
Okay, discussion on the appeal.
Mr. Tofty made it very clear that this could, even if it's not binding, that we can have a referendum anything we want, and I'm asking for that. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever that this would be non-binding. I must also remind you that Mr. Tofty, in his June 6, 2007 memo to the school board, was the one that set this whole thing on stage about not having any referendums, but I would really question the legality of all that. So I think we need to get another opinion on this. As a consequently here, that more important, you don't have any reason whatsoever to rule this out of order. If people don't like it, you can vote it down. You can't rule it out of order.
It's been ruled out of order. Member Saliga-Punko.
Can we vote? Can we just move on?
We are
Thank you.
appealing the ruling of the chair that this is out of order. Member Glass.
Yes, there was some question as to whether or not this could be, in fact, added to a referendum, and I wasn't satisfied that the legal basis wasn't in fact there for that purpose. This board considered the overall funding of the Red Plan option back in June 18th of 07 in a resolution as to whether or not to hold a referendum. And if that resolution was valid and the decision was made not to hold a referendum, I certainly don't see the difference as to why this motion to hold a similar referendum would not be also valid. And so I would question the legality, saying that you could do it then, but you can't do it now.
There were, back in June, and correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent or legal counsel, back in June of 07, there were a variety, as there have been ever since, a variety of funding sources involved, some of which had the possibility of a referendum. So that's why, and not this category of funding, however, as Mr. Tofty has already made clear this evening. So that's why that was voted on by the board. So let's go ahead and vote on the appeal of my ruling, which was or of the ruling of the chair that this was an out of order motion. All those in favor of the appeal, which would mean overturning the chair, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. No. Okay, that fails 2-5. Therefore, that brings us back to the resolution.
Okay.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on the resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no.
No.
That passes 5-2 with members Glass and Johnston voting no. Member Wasson, the next resolution, please.
Be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District Number 709, St. Louis County, State of Minnesota, that the 10-year Capital Facilities Plan 2010 update be approved. I move Resolution B710, 2798.
Second.
Thank you, Member Wasson, and seconded by Member Saliga-Punko. Is there discussion on this one? Member Casper.
Mr. Leiter, 10 years ago, when you did a 10-year plan, did it include any of this that's happening right now?
Chair Grover, Member Casper, I'd have to look at it line by line, but I would say certainly there are some elements of our current long-range plan and even some of these items here that were probably on some of those versions of our plan. It evolved over time. We completed a lot of work. Every year we added more work because every year things became more deferred or their state and condition required attention. As I'm saying that, I would qualify that even the plan before you, it needs to continue to be a document that evolves and is improved over time and modified. And at some point when our buildings are renovated or new, we're going to need to start looking at, in the next 10 years, even after a brand new building, what are the types of things that you might need to address, such as carpet replacement or painting. And so this is really a snapshot in time based on the best information I have, given everything else that we're working on. I used the information that was part of the Johnson Controls assessment of facilities, which we've all been watching and seeing over the years, and incorporated it into this updated document, provided some inflation to those numbers to apply here, and I'm looking for the board to act on this with the understanding that next year we'll be looking at it again. We'll be 1 year closer towards the years where these projects will actually be recommended to the board, and we'll look at how we're going to finance them.
Which is exactly what my point is. We're going to approve a 10-year plan that's going to change next year and evolve. So that's, having done this before, understanding that needs change and priorities change based on circumstances out of our control. And that's basically my point, is that the document that we look at today and look at for the next 10 years, how it looks in a year may be completely different than how it looks today. So
that's correct.
Just a clarification were you done, Member Casper? Okay, before I move on to Member Glass. What we're voting on is the draft that we received at the Business Committee meeting has not changed, is that correct?
There was I think a copy that was sent out on Friday, on the 15th, and I did go into.
Did I miss that? Where was that?
Email.
It was an email? Okay,
it was
I
an
did
email.
miss it then. Okay.
Yeah, and really, the only changes were I communicated to you now the page number that relates to our 1,600-page document, looking at some of the fiscal year indications on where that work is planned, and just went back through after the Business Committee. I was still working on it even at that time, and so what you have before you for action tonight was sent out in a communication, I believe it is, in your information that you have.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that. Member Glass?
Yes, I've commented on this earlier in this meeting tonight, in that the amended resolution for the red plan that we passed on June 24th authorized $2.2 million for this building, and this amended plan 3 weeks later authorizes $1.365 million, and it leaves all of the safety and health issues into the future, into years 2021, 2014, 2021, 2021, 2014, and 2021. This is totally unacceptable for the kids and the people living in this building to have these type of safety and health issues deferred for 5 and 11 years. But the most important thing is when we did pass the amended red plan for $2.2 million, the roof was leaking at the time we did that. As you remember, there was a rainstorm. Drippage could be heard splashing on the balcony and elsewhere. And this building will not survive if you don't fix the roof and keep it fixed. So regardless of what money is spent, we need to fix the roof, and we need to do it in a way that it doesn't wash away the front yard and displace the other features, the sidewalk and the walkway. So we do need to fix that for sure. And why we're not doing it in the near future rather than in the distant future, I haven't been privy to that discussion. And this is one of the items in this amended red plan that, to my knowledge, we had never, ever discussed or talked about or had any prior information other than we got when this amended red plan was given to us on about the first week in June of this year. So these are all new numbers, but I am happy to see that all 12.7 million are scheduled for deferred maintenance into the future. They didn't leave out too many of the 14 million original 81 defects that needed to be corrected. The reality of spreading out that over 10, 11 years is not consistent with what these consultants have told us are the urgency of the fix. We've got some parts of this building that are ready to collapse because of the corrosion that exists in the staircases and in the supporting substructure. So unless those are immediately fixed, there's going to be major problems.
Which one do you want to go first?
Go ahead, Terry. I think I want to clarify the 2 million whatever plus that was in the amendment was being done. In fact, I'm not sure, aren't the bids about due for the roof on this building to come in? This million something here is on top of the 2-some million that's already in the plan.
I would agree with the Superintendent. The thing I would point out, and in my cover letter, I did try to emphasize that this plan only includes the line items that are qualifying for alternative facilities revenue. Our long-range plan and the amended plan included line items that are funded from other categories of funding. So this is just the alternative facilities. If we added the other line items, for example, in this building there was a significant line item for improved security and access control. That is funded by a source of funding other than the alternate facilities. So this is just relating to the alternate facilities. So when you look at for example, the number total that is indicated to be complete with the long-range plan, that's not the complete work that's being performed as part of the long-range plan. And as far as the roof in this building, we are proceeding with receiving bids for the roof repair through a state contract, and that's in progress. We had some meetings Monday, for that matter, reviewing the final details of the scope of work. And we're going to continue to look, my office as well, at any aspect of this building that presents some type of imminent danger or concern or risk, so that we'll make sure to bring that to your attention if it's not something that's in our plan to address within the time frame that's needed.
Great, thank you.
Keith, did you want to add to that? Or?
No, I think the idea is even in the long-range plan, the outside structure, preserving the structural integrity of the building still in the plan. That was an important piece. Obviously, we've got to maintain the exterior of this building. So those, as you heard, we're working on the bids and specifications for that piece is ongoing right now.
Thank you. Member Johnston.
And just another issue which we brought up during the committee meeting was that there's another reason we're having this long range or this 10-year plan, is that's a requirement. If we're going to use the loophole not to have a referendum on all facilities, we have to have a 10-year plan. And so that's another reason that we have that. The original red plan had virtually every item that's in this one, as well as was in the original 10-year plan 10 years ago, was part of the red plan. And so again, this is kind of a bureaucratic thing for us to allow be able to keep using that loophole, which of course I'm opposed to, and that loophole allows us not to have a referendum at all on the red plan. So again, that's another reason for this, which is why I'm opposing this, is because I think it's just another justification for continuing not having a referendum on these issues.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on the 10-year capital facilities plan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no.
No.
Carries 5-2 with members Glass and Johnston voting no. Member Wasson.
Adopting the district's health, safety, and environmental management program for 2010-2011. The purpose of the program is to ensure that the district provides a safe and healthy work and learning environment for its employees and students. Every reasonable precaution must be taken to protect the safety of students, employees, and other citizens present on school district property, etc. The implementation with the advice from the Health and Safety Committee. The district will also monitor and evaluate potential hazards. The district administration will demonstrate its commitment to school safety and environmental health, and the board will ensure that appropriate funding and resources are available. I move Resolution B710-2797.
Second.
Resolution moved and seconded by members Wasson and Saliga-Punko respectively. Any discussion on this? Member Glass?
Can you give us an indication of the total cost of this program? Just a ballpark.
Chair Grover, Member Glass, it caught a little off guard with that, but I believe and maybe Jody, you can help me as far as our annual levy in our alt facilities. Is it like 168 times 2? So approximately $360,000, and that is an annual levy that the school board approves as part of our levy. It's related to alternative facilities and specifically for health and safety, environmental management, and I believe it's presented to you in that manner. And that pays for salaries, for training, for resources, bloodborne pathogen. These programs that you see here, both consulting services that help us to develop and provide this training, as well as in-house staff and materials that provide for personal and protection equipment of employees.
So that's paid by the local taxpayers?
Yes. Well, with some state aid, I think there's
a matching state aid component to this as well.
50% of it is
50% match, did you say? Okay, thank you.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on this adoption of the district's health, safety, environmental management program resolution. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. That carries unanimously. Member Wasson.
Resolution approving revisions to schematic design related to new construction at Grant Nettleton Elementary School, whereas the school board by Resolution B210-2730 approved a schematic design related to new construction at Grant Nettleton on February 23, 2010. And whereas design development efforts have determined there are significant modifications to the approved design that should be made to improve the project that should receive school board acknowledgement. Therefore, be it resolved by the School Board of Independent School District 709, St. Louis County, State of Minnesota, that the revised schematic design related to new construction at Grant Nettleton, as presented July 12, 2010 Business Committee meeting and attached hereto, is hereby approved. I move Resolution B710-2803.
Thank you, Member Wasson. Seconded by Member Saliga-Punko. Member Casper.
I actually have a question for Greg. If you could come forward. You ran a couple of meetings for the past couple of weeks with some of the folks that were involved in the design, and handed out some questionnaires asking folks from that group, which were teachers, custodians, cook staff, administration, parents, all sorts of folks that were part of this plan and part of the modifications. And I was hoping to see some of the results of that questionnaire, percentage-wise, how they felt about the questions that were asked with regards to the plan. And as you know, at those meetings, I had expressed concern about the classroom configuration, as far as the opportunities to do some things at those schools with some of the additional money that comes to grant. And you've reassured me, and I'm taking your word for that, that modifications could be made to this changed plan, modified schematic, that would allow the potential for that to happen. I just want to reiterate that we've had that conversation, and that you and your people that are involved in the design feel that way, and that the parents and other folks that were at those meetings are comfortable with that as well. So.
First of all, there were 14 people present at that meeting, and they all indicated from strongly agree to strongly disagree on 17 statements that had to do with the site plan, and then level 1, level 2, and level 3 of the building, relating to the floors of the building. Virtually 100% of the people approved the site plan and the separation of the parent and bus drop-off. I did send an email out to everybody that was not at that meeting and attached that questionnaire to the email I sent out, asking for those people, if they chose, to complete it and either mail it back or email it back to me. I received 2 additional, which I've collated also, and I'll have those statements prepared tomorrow, those comments and all the strongly agree to strongly disagree. So you'll have all of that as of tomorrow, as will any other board members who would want to see that. Again, when we go to level 1, 2, and 3, virtually 100% of the people strongly agreed or agreed with the clustering, with the exception of 4 things that we talked about. One was possible moving of the Head Start classrooms due to the being on the 2nd level and that access to the bridge, and we think we've got a solution there. A second issue was a movement of 2 a DCD, ASD suite for district-wide special ed that was close to a collaborative teaching space, and we think we have a solution that still allows them to move and to move the 3rd grades over to that collaborative teaching space. So we think we've got that solved. A third issue, Tom, was the issue of the building services and how much of that 3,400 square feet we would need compared to other buildings. We think now that we can move the large muscle space into that area and then free up another multi-purpose space, completing then adequate spaces for the enrollment should we not make any decisions in terms of building blocks and boundaries. So I think when we come together, the next meeting will be with Ms. Heilig and a secretary and nurse as we begin to look at the office and how that fits with a center stairway. And then at the end of August, we'll have our next design team meeting where we start to look at the changes that we've made that meet the needs of the comments and the suggestions. So I think we're going to be able to meet all of what you're expecting.
Okay, thank you.
Member Glass?
Don't run away just yet. Let me ask a question relevant to one of the classes that I saw in operation there that had quite a number of homeless children being taught. I understand that your 14 people that commented on the design probably were parents, or at least connected that way, but these homeless kids wouldn't necessarily be represented. Have you dealt in any way with the teachers for the needs of the homeless?
We have a grant collaborative space, and in addition would have 3 multi-purpose spaces that could serve in those capacities. We don't have a designated space, but we will have additional spaces that could be used in a variety of ways.
But as homeless needs come up as an issue?
Yes, it has. You know what? We have also a person on staff that works with our homeless population. I can't give you the exact number, but there's a few hundred kids. I want to say 280 across the district. This is not the only school with homeless children. We spent a lot of time talking about how to support homeless children in their home school, what kind of services they might need. We've also talked about, one of the issues has been so far is if a person is homeless, we try to keep them in the same school even though they may move around the community, because there's kind of that provides one level of stability. We're trying to talk about that long term because we've used some of our special ed busing and other busing to make that kind of work. So this is an ongoing discussion. So certainly, again, when we think about all children, that's a category that we spend a lot of time talking about. And Deb Wagner and I have got together on many occasions, and I keep updated on how many students there are, where they are, what their needs are. And so, again, they're a part of our total population. So they haven't been forgotten. We think about them in both the whole structure of where they're going to be within the system. There's actually a homeless shelter that's actually fed directly into Congdon that some of you will know about. So, I mean, this is a whole district-wide piece, not just a single school issue.
Fine. One other question. On the this particular resolution states that there is an attachment that indicates the schematic design. Would this be the attachment that we got at the last meeting?
Yes.
Okay, and that one was devoid of a number of important details. Will the approval process, when those details are added, come back to this board?
Yes, we will be bringing for approval of working drawings, just as we've done for each other project. So when we delineate then exactly what that multi-purpose space looks like or a kindergarten classroom looks like, you will have working drawings that show exactly down to the 6,000 square.
When would you expect that those will come in?
I would think we'll be working with the staff starting in the end of August and working through August and September, and I would hope October to November we will bring back for approval of working drawings of the detailed of those areas. You'll have ample chance to see that. I would also add that this building, I'm very pleased with this personally, because I think we're on our 16th revision, I think, of the plan. We've worked very hard with that community and group to meet their needs, and this building currently, as the way it sits, is 94,000 square feet, and compared to all the other buildings, this is the largest amount of square foot dedicated to special ed, regular ed, and alternative use spaces that we have in the district. And we think it's necessary, but I think we're really meeting the needs of this community.
And it goes without saying that you're going to make sure the roof is securely fixed for the next 30 years on this old school?
I'll defer to Carrie there.
The roof at Grant is going to have a 30-year warranty when it's done?
Certainly the new additions are going to have the 30-year warranty. The other roof areas at Grant are less than 10 years old.
Okay, so they're in good condition, and,
Yes.
and they're on the long-range plan to be looked at in 10 years?
I doubt. I think they will last 30 to 40 years, regardless of their warranties.
Well, it wouldn't do for them to leak.
All right, let's go ahead and vote on this resolution for the schematic design at Grant. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no.
No.
Passes 5-2 with members Glass and Johnston voting no. I believe that completes the resolutions. Member Wasson, would you like to move?
I would like to
Freudian slip,
move the rest of the business committee report.
Thank you, and that is seconded by Member Saliga Punko. Items to be withheld, board members. Member Johnston.
I'd like to call for separate vote on item number 1.
Which?
1A through F.
Do you mean the bids?
No, the financial report.
Financial report, 1A through F?
Right.
All in once?
I believe we usually approve that or not?
On separate votes on each of those?
No, separate vote on it, but one A through F. We can have a separate,
All right.
we can have all of them together.
Okay, any other items that you wanted to withhold?
Okay, I'd like to withhold 1G, 1H, 2A, 1.
2A1, all right.
2A3, B1B1.
Which one is that?
That's page 46, reference page 46.
Okay, under RFPs?
Yep, RFP. Right.
Special Inspection Services at Lincoln, all right. Anything else?
And 1C.
What do you mean by that?
That's the next one down. That's district-wide disposable air filters.
All right.
And 1C2. And
do you mean the refrigeration repair?
Yep. And 4A. Next page. And 4B1.
Change order at the Eastern High School?
Yep.
All right. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Member Glass?
Withhold 1B.
It's already been withheld.
Approval of claims.
Yes, it's already been withheld. 1A through F have been withheld.
Okay, and then separate vote on bids. 1197, asbestos abatement.
That's already been withheld.
And special inspection services middle.
It's already been withheld, Member Glass.
Okay, that's all for me.
All right. Member Johnston, you wanted a separate vote on 1A through F?
Yeah, just to make, I would suggest if it's okay with Member Glass, I think he pulled out 1B. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I was going to suggest that I've got some problems with A through F. If Member Glass wants to talk about his first, and I'll just lump all mine in one discussion, if that's okay with the chairperson.
Yes.
Just to speed it up.
All right. Member Glass?
Yes, I want to mention that the approval of claims passed a milestone. We didn't get a hard copy of it. It's instead of being hit in the head on the first mailing, we got an electronic copy. So that was about a 90-page savings in paper. I also want to mention that the JCI payment for June was $500,000, and the Duluth News Tribune got $1,000 approximately. That's all.
All right, Member Johnston.
Yeah, again, I'm asking for a vote on these. Is that just?
Sure.
Are we there? And
yeah.
And I'm going to be voting against ones A or 1A through F. And the reason why is that I brought this up before. I really think that these should be submitted under signature to the board. And I've asked that before, and that's the only reason I'm voting against it, just to try to get people to try to. I think we should have more signatures on that. I don't have any specific questions. I just think we should have a little more formality when we're approving something as a board. So that's all my discussion on that.
All right. We'll vote now on items 1A through F. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no.
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 Passes 5-2. Members Glass and Johnston voting no. Member Johnston, you withheld, was it G?
Yep.
Item G, fundraisers?
Yeah, I'm going to be voting for these, and the reason I withheld that is I wanted to vote, approve these, of course, G and H. We could do both of those together unless somebody else wants to have a discussion on it, but I certainly want to approve those. Or I would vote in favor of those, put it that way.
I'm not understanding then, what is your point of withholding those?
Because I want to vote for those, but yet I wanted to vote against the ones up above. I wanted to make it very clear that I'm in favor of the fundraisers and the investment in children's schools.
All right, so
but
those,
I opposed the ones up above.
Those would be voted on with the report as a whole then. You also withheld 2A1, the first bid.
Well, the reason I've asked for a vote on 1G is I'm going to be voting against some of the other ones. I'm not going to have any discussion, so I'd like to vote approve those. Otherwise, I'm going to have to go back and pull them out again.
Well, I think that would defeat the purpose of separate votes and the consent agenda. So why don't you pull out? Why don't you withhold the ones that you want to vote against? That's the standard. That has been the practice for basically.
Well, I like to vote for things, and I would rather vote for things. I'm asking to have a separate vote on 1G and H because I like to vote for them, not to vote against them. I think that's 6-1.
Are you intending to vote against the entire business committee report?
Well, the ones that I vote for, I will vote against. Yes.
Well, why don't we keep the process simpler and pull the ones that you want to vote against, just like you did with 1A through F? That's been the practice.
Well, that would be. Then we're going to have virtually every one then. I was trying to simplify them by only having the ones that I wanted to
tried that. We did that before a couple months ago, and it did not simplify things. In fact, it totally destroyed the consent agenda process.
Okay, well then 2A1.
All right. You want a separate vote on that?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have discussion on it?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm opposed to this, as I've always been opposed to the Western Middle School. Again, the people don't want it. I'm going to say it again, and I'll leave it at that. I think everybody knows my opinion here, as well as the community's opinion on this. We're going on the wrong track. We haven't been open and upfront about this, and lots of questions that are sitting out there, as my recent editorial in the paper showed. And so I'm asking the board to vote against this.
All right. We'll go ahead and vote separately on the Western Middle School home building demolition bid. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed say no.
No.
Carries 5-2. Member Johnston, you withheld item 3. 2A3, the asbestos abatement.
Well, that's one that I would be voting for, so if you want to go back to the one I'm voting against, if that's how you would prefer it.
We can, did you want to, remember, I'm just going to be proactive on this. Member Glass, did you want to vote separately on that one?
Yes.
Okay, we'll go, since we're talking about 2A3, and let's go ahead and handle that one separately. Do you have discussion on that, or do either of you? Okay. All those in favor of the asbestos abatement at Denfeld say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Okay, that is approved unanimously. Member Johnston, you withheld the special inspection services at Lincoln Park Middle School, RFP number 1, B1.
Yeah. First of all, I can't speak to...
Do you want to turn your light on there?
Well, I guess I can't speak, huh? I first have to say up front here, I can't mention specifics because I've got a conflict of interest on there. I'd like to speak in generalities here if I could because of my conflict of interest. Now, consequently, I won't be able to vote, but I do have an opinion on some of these. I think that we are hiring, if we started in Cross Anderson, they should be doing this work. I don't think we need to be hiring other subcontractors to do this, and that's why I wanted to have some discussion on it. Unfortunately, I can't vote for this. For or against it, I have to abstain, but I did want to have a generic discussion on this because I think we should be handling these type of issues with our already multitude of contract administrators.
Member Glass.
Yes, I withheld on this one for the reason that it seems to be duplicating a service that we have in our regulations, that the district staff are supposed to oversee the detailed building and the standards. Is this another one that you would be the clerk of the works for, Mr. Leiter? and you need help on, or is this going to be a duplication of you or a clone? And if it is, that's great. Although, where is it budgeted that your clone is worth $81 or $81,000 for this activity?
Chair Grover, members Glass and Johnston, the special inspections is related to, and it's a required service for all construction. It's actually something that we have to identify an individual firm for each project in order to receive a building permit. And this inspection has to do with the testing primarily of materials, concrete, soils, concrete strengths. They perform inspections on the various types of construction aspects and the materials used in them. And so they provide the collection of those sample materials and then the analysis and reporting of them to make sure it's consistent with specifications. And so we're doing this on every one of our projects. And we'll have a separate agreement between the district and a testing firm. We're using Twin Ports Testing, Golder and Associates, American Engineering Testing. We've tried to spread around this particular service through all of the companies that have been providing these types of services locally.
I did not see the RFP, so I couldn't comment on what it was. So that's one of the reasons why it was an uncertainty as to what the application for. So you're telling me this is a budgeted amount included in every individual contract, building contract, for the verification of the materials and the uses.
Within our long-range plan, there are budgets established for this testing of materials.
So will the data be coming to you?
The applications for payment will be coming to me, as well as the reports. The reports are provided copy to the school district and the architects, engineers, and the construction managers, all of which are reviewing them to determine if there's any failure of those materials to the specification. And so at the point that I receive an invoice, I would process that for payment, and it would primarily be based on the value of each test that they perform and the actual inspection time.
Does the data also go to the city inspector?
I believe it does. I believe it goes to the City Building Safety Department.
Okay, thank you.
All right. If Member Johnston wants to abstain on this one, so we'll need to vote separately. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say no. This passes 5-1 with one abstention. Member Johnston, you withheld quote C1, the district-wide disposable air filters.
I'll be voting for that. If you want me to go back to one I'm voting against instead.
Yeah, let's
okay, that would be number 4A1.
4A1. Okay.
More discussion on this. I don't know if I'm voting against it.
Member Johnson, we have a revised recommendation, and I think we should let Mr. Leiter lead the presentation on that, and if necessary, Mr. Simonson and St. Arnold, I believe it's St. Arnold, are in the background there. Go ahead, Kerry.
Chair Grover, members of the board, at the business committee meeting, we presented you, our RJF was there to present to you the quotes that we received from our property liability insurance carrier. That recommendation is the same. At that meeting, however, we did indicate that RJF was looking at additional quotes from workers' compensation carriers. Since that time, they've done some additional good work and found another $20,000, which is going to result in a $56,430 savings over our current carrier. So we're recommending that the board approve for workers' compensation a policy with Dakota Truck Underwriters, and that information was provided to you in your packets tonight.
Thank you, Kerry. Our Member Johnston.
Yeah, I'd like to commend again. Thanks again. The update. It sounds like they did a little good work and found a little better price on that workman's comp, and want to commend. If you could pass it on to RJF, that's appreciated.
Thank you. I believe they're still here tonight, and just in case you had any questions.
No, just thanks.
Member Johnston, you did not want a separate vote on this?
I'll withdraw my separate vote.
All right, thank you.
I would like a separate vote on it.
Okay. Let's go ahead and vote separately on 4A1, the workers' comp and property liability insurance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. That is carried 7-0. Next item withheld was change orders. Number 1, Member Johnston. At Eastern High School, or the new East High School.
I have no comments on it. Just for a vote.
All right, that completes the withheld items. Let's go ahead and vote on business committee report.
Sure. I did ask for a vote actually on that one. That was the one that I've asked for us.
Which one?
That one I just talked about.
Oh, I'm sorry. You wanted a separate vote. I misunderstood. All right. Let's go ahead and vote separately on change order B1 at the New East High School or at the Ordine site. All those in favor of the change order say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. That carries 5-2. All right. That brings us to the voting on the remainder of the business committee report. All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed say no. That is approved 6-1. Member Glass voting no. That brings us to special resolutions, of which there are none. Questions / other. Student Representative Witzig.
Chair Grover, members of the board, I wasn't planning on making this comment because it doesn't have anything really direct, it wasn't really relevant, but in light of some of the things some of the speakers said tonight, and I just thought I'd share, I had the opportunity in June to go to the Boys State, which is put on by the American Legion, where they take high school boys, which are recommended from their schools and districts, and they kind of walk them through a hands-on learning of the local government system. And I was kind of surprised to find myself, one of the things they focus on is teaching parliamentary procedure, and having just sat through these meetings, I was able to pick it up or able to put that into practice when they needed a chair or whatnot. And I was commended several times by some kids there, like, wow, you really have a handle on this, like, you're really doing a good job, and like, you've made some really solid decisions. Anyway, and I don't say that to brag, but simply to make this point. My rule of thumb is I really didn't have that good of a handle on parliamentary procedure, but I would ask myself, what would Chair Grover do? Every time, what would Chair Grover do? What would Chair Grover do? And it always yielded a better result. And I also learned that parliamentary procedure is not about following every rule to the T, but about preserving that, I think it's a spirit du corps, I think that's how you say it, just the respectful attitude brought to the table. So as far as lessons learned from the board, I think some students hopefully are learning some good things. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you for that, Peter. I appreciate that. Member Saliga-Punko?
I just want to make a quick comment because before I came tonight, I was able to have a tour of the newest building on the UMD campus, the new Science and Engineering building. Brand new, just opened 2 months ago, and I just looking at it and some of the similarities between it and its LEED certification and what we are doing in our buildings was astounding. Just to see the plantings, we're going to be, some of the not rain garden, but some of the plantings that we're going to have with plants and the natural light, just all the different things that they did. To make that a really open, accessible building. And I compared it. In fact, it was really kind of fun talking to a bunch of people because they're so supportive of our plan, and they see the reason that we need to do this as a community, just like all these colleges. I've been looking at colleges with my daughter, going throughout the state. All these colleges have done new buildings, taking advantage of energy efficiency, natural lighting, all the same thing that we've talked about for almost 5 years. And, college, you're trying to recruit people to come into your college and go to school. That's what all these buildings new buildings that all these different campuses are doing. And that's exactly what is helping our school district too. And I love hearing from our local hospitals and different businesses of what we are doing and how it's actually keeping people here and people wanting to go, besides our wonderful programs. But we're going to have beautiful facilities that, which we already have some, but just been really fun to see, to have that comparison. So I just wanted to share that, because if you get a chance, go up to UMD and see their new. It's really close to the parking lot, and it's really fun to compare it to what we're doing. So I just had to share that great news.
Thank you, Member Saliba-Punko. Seeing no more lights on, we are adjourned.